Hello, good morning and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile we put Ghana first. I'm your host, Samson Ladi Anyanini, and welcome to the very first edition of 2020. The EC declares the voters' register unreliable and the entire system at certain risk of crashing if used for this year's presidential and parliamentary elections. In short, it is not fit for purpose. Civil society and opposition political parties agreed to an upgrade of the system rather than a complete replacement with proposed enhanced features. The EC insists on a replacement as it declares some of the component parts of the current system useless and not convertible or upgradable. It contends a new system will save the taxpayer over 173 million cedis. Today, on Newsfile, your most authoritative news analysis platform, we sift facts from fiction as we interrogate the burning issue to douse the mounting tension that could plunge this country into chaos because of a not credible, acceptable voters' register. Let's have all your questions starting right now, including why we cannot have a once-for-all multi-purpose national identification system, whether for electoral, planning, or developmental or other purposes, as proposed by the Supreme Court 5 years ago. We'll be right back to deal with the vexed matters. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And I go straight to Samson's take. My take today, I title it, Ahmed Swale, my RTI request number 1. I have, through my takes, written about the law on many issues to educate and share knowledge. I have sought to educate that the law prohibits littering, not fixing your roadworthy sticker on the front windscreen of your car, recording someone without their permission unless the purpose, among others, is to prevent disorder or crime or for public safety. I have written about the ideals of the founding of Ghana and the rights and duties of citizens in the Constitution, including to foster a spirit of loyalty to country, promotion of the culture of political tolerance, national unity, living in harmony with others, the duty to protect and preserve public property, expose and combat misuse and waste of public funds and property. I have given education on your fundamental human rights, which you must not allow police or anybody to violate. And I have led crusades, especially against corruption. I have received massive encouragement that spurs me on to continue to invest time on my take, knowing that knowledge of the law does not only empower and give individuals confidence generally, but it makes a country better. In this election year, 2020, I shall do a lot of voter education and also take you into the RTI law so you know how to request information and what to do when your request is refused. By Act 989, there should be by now the Independent RTI Commission with a 7-member board to drive implementation of the law. The President is enjoined by the law to appoint people with expertise who must not occupy any other office of profit or engage in any partisan political activity. It is to promote, monitor, protect, and enforce your right to information. It is this commission's job to create awareness and give education on your right to information. Public institutions mandatorily must publish manuals telling you the kinds of information they generate and store, which departments you must contact, and the manual must contain contact details of information officers to whom you should submit your request. But these institutions require guidelines to prepare these manuals, which the RTI Commission must have published by now. In part 2, I will continue the education on the structures the law mandates for implementation of the RTI. Today, though, I file a public request for information on why no one is standing trial answering for the assassination of Tiger Eyes Ahmed Hussein Swaleh. A year ago, he was killed, and obviously over the investigative piece that will change the face of corruption-ridden football number 12. He was the key witness for the state in planning prosecution. His death cannot end that plan. Number 12 was teamwork. Let the states provide sufficient protection for witnesses, for people to answer for his killing, and the expose in the documentary number 12 right now. That's my take today. Now let me welcome you to our discussion today. It's a single issue topic discussion. A new voters register or not. But why not? The EC is here, and we invite you to send in your questions so that they can answer them. My guest this morning, Bright Simmons. He's Honorary Vice President, Imani Africa, and here also representing the 18 CSOs that have issued a statement declaring the EC's position as deficient. Good morning and welcome, Bright. Great. We ended Newsfile with you, and we are starting with you again.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Also here is Dr. Srebo Kwaku. Dr. Srebo Kwaku. He is Director of Electoral Services, Electoral Commission. Doc, good morning and welcome to Newsfile. Having, take us through very briefly the weaknesses or the challenges in the existing system and what the new system is and what it offers. So, that is how we are beginning this morning, so that we get to know how exactly the EC claims that it is going to save the taxpayer a whopping over 173 million if it took the path of a new, completely new system rather than an upgrade.
Thank you very much, Samson, and a good morning to you and your listeners. I think that this week there's been a lot of discussion around this very same topic that we are discussing this morning. And I think that the general public, civil society, everybody has been interested in this process.
Sorry, I skipped something,
yes,
which is very important to us. So this year we'll be doing some single issue discussions on the show. We may do just 2 issues, we may do just 1 issue. But once we're doing that, we will have our guests take the opportunity to give us some small commentary by way of some news review of the issues that dominated the headlines. So forgive me, that's where we start. And very briefly, in 3 minutes, each one of you, what's the issue you chose?
Well, I mean, I would have loved to have spoken about this electoral register.
Yes, I know. We're going to do that. You have a lot of time for that.
For me, one of the things that caught my attention was the road traffic accident that occurred at Dampoa Senior Commander. And it's a very tragic incident that happened. And it's something that, if you listen to news closely, it's something that is a recurring theme. It happens over and over and over again. And it beats my imagination that as a nation, we are not taking the appropriate steps to ensure that we sort of reduce these incidents from happening. I mean, in looking at the news articles, I did a general search to see what was happening worldwide. And if you look, the WHO reports that about 1.35 million road traffic accidents occur every year. This rate, which leads to death, this is actually higher than the HIV, malaria, and TB rates, death rates that occur worldwide. Plus, majority of it actually occurs in low-income countries. The irony of it all is that only 1% of the vehicles that we have worldwide actually we have them in the low-income countries. And yet 13% of road traffic accidents related deaths occur in our part of the world, compared to the high-income countries that have about 40% of the vehicles in the world. The death rate from road traffic accidents is only 7%. So the question we need to ask ourselves is, what is the difference between us and them? And for me, there are a couple of things. It's regulation, better routes, and public awareness as to the effects of road traffic accidents. And I think that is what we as a nation should be looking towards to ensure that we at least reduce the rates of road traffic accident-related deaths in this country.
Doc, you also chose the same issue to comment on. So what's your comment about it? I mean, the recurrence. Some of us are really getting fatigued discussing some of these issues.
Thank you, my brother. I would link it to the economic effect of such accidents. We are losing a lot of our labor force through that. We are losing a lot of people who have a lot of dependence. And some of the people, I mean, their children and the rest, they would have also been some people, but for the loss of their parents and their relations. When an accident happens and people are crying, I feel for them. Because you can imagine that somebody is in school, the only person who is in charge of paying school fees and the rest is the one who has been taken away by death. And I believe that we can easily avoid such unfortunate death on our road. But I also appeal to the people who have power and control over such traffic on our roads.
Right.
If some of our roads can be upgraded to dual carriage, dualizing them will reduce the incidence of head-on collisions. Again, the security services too should also ensure that people abide by the traffic regulations, because we have speed limits on our roads, but hardly do we go by them. And hardly do you see people being prosecuted for infringing on such rules. So it's unfortunate, because if it had not happened to you before, you will not appreciate it.
Right.
Yeah, so that's what I would say about it.
Okay. So it's good the minister, deputy minister in charge of this sector has also announced that they intend to dualize that particular road. And I mean, how long did it have to take us, and how many lives? And the accidents that occur there, always claiming in the dozens, double dozens of precious lives. Okay. Bright, what's your issue?
The eco.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's the echo or the eco.
Yeah, the eco currency.
I was quite intrigued to learn that the government had very rapidly endorsed President Alan Ouattara's decision to, well, he said he was speaking on behalf of YMO as a whole, to change the CFA into the eco. I was surprised then to learn very recently this week that the finance and economic ministers finally met, and they completely rejected the decision. First, you probably aware that we have WAMS, which is the English segment of the regional economic bloc, and Ghana is a member of WAMS. We are not a member of the CFA grouping. So not being a member of that monetary union, and before we had consulted with our allies in WAMS, we rapidly decided to support Alan Ouattara's position. And now, after the English-speaking countries had met, I don't know what is our actual position, but we endorsed the statement that came out that President Alan Ouattara has no authority to unilaterally accept the powers of WAMS to create a currency simply by changing the name of the CFA to the ECO. The process was always very clear. WAMS will ensure that there is convergence. once there is convergence among the English language, English-speaking countries, we will introduce our currency, common currency, and then there will be a fusion between our common currency and the XOF or the CFA. Ghana, since as long as I've been tracking, that's at least a decade, has never met all the convergence criteria, including some of the primary ones, that will make it possible for that currency to come into being, the currency in the English-speaking area to come into being. Now, not having done that, and being willing to accept the unilateral decision to create an AUCO simply by changing the name of the CFA, I believe that in some way we've lost a bit of trust, especially with Nigeria. What is important is the government needs to clarify its position. Are we in support of this unilateral position of the YMU states, or are we with once on this matter? We can't play both sides. And I'm not by any chance saying that I encourage some kind of schism between French-speaking and English-speaking countries. But the attitude of the president of Cote d'Ivoire clearly has riled some of our allies, particularly Nigeria. And there's no doubt that when it comes to this region, our primary foreign policy focus is the relationship between Nigeria and Ghana.
Okay.
So we cannot sacrifice Nigeria for Ivory Coast. That's my point.
All right. Clara, what are you talking about?
No, for me, it has to do with the road accidents. Particularly, I understand that over 2,000 deaths were recorded, lost. Like you said, it's fatiguing to keep talking about it. My firm did some job on analyzing some of the issues on the road traffic. And the issues are I think we've known them for a long time. One, collaboration. We have different institutions in charge of road safety. How do they collaborate? There is very little collaboration if you look at it. The bigger one, resources. And it becomes a bit tiring to keep talking about. We set up institutions, then we don't resource them to undertake what we set them up to undertake. And then we just appoint people into these institutions. And then at the end of the day, you want to ask, so what have we achieved? So yes, now we have the National Road Authority and all of that, but still, where is the collaboration? We have a lot of institutions, the MTT, the DVLA, the emergency services. How are they collaborating? When you even come in terms of delivering first aid on the spot, it's non-existent. Go to the hospital. So we have very basic issues that I don't know whether we want to keep talking about them, or that I don't know whether we want to solve the problem or we just want to talk about it. Because a lot of the time when you look at the professed policy and what actually happens on the ground, there's a big gap. I think as a people, we have to start addressing our issues rather than really talking about them.
And on this matter, including the driver and passenger pedestrian responsibility as well.
Education, that is where the Road Safety Authority could partner with the media. I've always said that for every country, if you have the majority of your people not complying, you are not going to go anywhere with enforcement, because you are going to be spending so much to enforce. So you put in the effort to make sure that the majority comply. Then you have the minority who don't comply, and you have the resources to prosecute the minority, those who don't comply, to serve as deterrents to others. What is the education? In terms of the legal framework, we've done quite a bit on legal framework. Our legal framework for road safety isn't that bad. There are some improvements that we can make, but it is not totally that bad. But look at the legal framework and look at the enforcement. Vast apart. We have speed limits by law. Who enforces speed limits? And how many speed cameras do we have to check who is violating the law and who is not violating the law? We have laws on seat belt, child restraint system, a lot of road safety issues. Who is enforcing them? And if you talk about who is enforcing them, are they well equipped to be able to enforce them? It's another matter. So probably we need to really look at, apart from setting up institutions, we keep talking about this over and over again, resourcing them to do what they're supposed to do.
Okay, thank you very much. So we will now proceed to have lay down the challenges with the current system and why they don't support an upgrade, or why it is almost a useless thing to embark upon, and also waste of money, and why it is that doing a completely new system is the best and will save us in excess of 173 million Ghana cedis. Yes.
Right, Samson, thanks once again. As I was saying before we departed a bit to give our take on some of the topical issues that are occurring in Ghana, I was proceeding to say that the voters register is a very critical component of any electoral process, and it is essential that that register is credible and people have faith in it. The only way to do that is to ensure that only the people who are eligible to vote are the people who end up being on that voters list. And I believe that this is what the Electoral Commission has been doing since its inception. Since 2011, the Electoral Commission has used biometrics for creating a biometric list, and then during voting day, we also verify voters using the biometric voter devices. It is important that before we delve into the challenges that we have as a commission with the equipment that we are currently using, we understand the processes that we need to go through before we can create a biometric voters list. Essentially, the reason why the biometrics were chosen was that it affords us to use the physiological features of every human being to create a unique signature that identifies you and is able to differentiate you from me, for example, from Dr. Akweku or Clara for that matter, right? So there are a number of modalities that are used to create those unique biometric signatures. One of them is your fingerprints, 10 fingerprints, or you could use your facial image. More advanced ones are your iris, your retina. These days, people even use your vein pattern, your voice pattern, and even your gait as a form of identification. And that creates that unique signature that is then used to identify you at a later date. This is what law enforcement agencies use worldwide, border control systems, and even in Ghana, we have various biometric systems that are currently available that are being used by SNITS, National Health Insurance Authority, etc., passports, DVLE, and all that. It's just so that, it's just because it is a good modality to identify a human being, and that is what
this is what you term as the AFIS.
No, the AFIS is an automated fingerprint identification system that uses only the fingerprints.
Okay.
All right. Now it's upgraded to an ABIS. The B now standing for biometric, because now all the other modalities can be added onto it. Okay, so you can have an ABIS that has facial records, that has iris, that has fingerprints. But typically when it started, it used to be just fingerprints. That's why it was referred to.
Okay, so let's proceed.
Right. So for us in Ghana, we've used the biometrics, the fingerprint biometrics, as the basis for our biometric register. And our system is such that, and if you can, I sent an image across, if it can be shown on the screen. The system is such that during the registration process, and anybody who has a voter ID has gone through that process, you walk to a registration officer. Now the registration officer has a kit which we refer to with this acronym BVR, standing for Biometric Voters Registration Kit. Essentially what that constitutes of, it constitutes of a laptop computer, a camera, a fingerprint scanner. And this fingerprint scanner is not just any fingerprint scanner, but a scanner that takes 4 fingers at a time. So we call it a 442. And then a printer together with a secure case. Because mind you, when we go on these registration exercises, we travel across the length and breadth of the country. Sometimes over rivers, we go through boats and all that. So we need a secure case that ensures that even if the kit drops, we still be able to use it.
Okay.
Right? So that's what constitutes it. So typically when you do a registration and you walk up to the registration officer, the process is that you fill a form with all your details in it. Then you proceed to take in your biometric data. Now that biometric data is, we capture your face and then we take your 10 fingerprints. When you do that, essentially what happens is, at enrollment, we extract an image of your fingerprint. Now it is important that that image meets a particular quality. If it doesn't meet that quality, extraction of the image from that quality then will result, extraction of the data from that poor quality image will result in a poor template being created. And it is the template that is used to match on voting day. So one precedes the other. If you have low quality images, the templates that are generated will also be poor. Now we store those templates in a database.
Okay.
Now typically what happens with most vendors who produce these AFISs is that there's a standard that is internationally accepted that you can keep that format in. But in order to make the matching process fast, they tend to convert that format from the images into their own proprietary templates, which they wrap their own algorithms around and therefore make the whole matching process faster. So that is what typically you have most vendors do. So once the templates are stored, on voting day, a voter walks to a polling station and then uses the biometric verification device. Now that device also has a fingerprint sensor, but instead of the big fingerprint sensor that the BVR has, it has just one for a single finger. Now you place your finger on that device and then it matches it against what we already have on the database. Now if it makes a match, essentially it has verified that you are who you say you are. And then you can progress to go and cast your ballots. Right. And that is the simple process. There are lots of other things that happen in between because mind you, when somebody registers, we keep those templates in a database and we'll match those templates against everybody else who comes to register so that we are sure that indeed there are only unique individuals that are in that database, ensuring the policy of one man, one vote.
Right.
So what it means is that all my 10 fingers, if I have 17 people on an electoral roll, all my 10 fingers will be matched against all the 10 fingers of all the other 17 million people that are on that electoral
So
roll.
we're trying to get some graphics that Yao has graciously provided us on the screen so that you can follow some of the things that he's talking about a lot more easily. But if you are listening on radio, you can go to My Joy Online right now. Go to My Joy Online, look for the story exclusive. These are the 36 challenges facing the current voters register. Exclusive. These are the 36 challenges facing the current voters register. In that story is attached this slide that you can follow as Yao takes us down trying to understand what is going on. Yes, please go on.
Right. So basically, in a nutshell, that is what our processes are. Now, we need to divide it into various sections in terms of what the actual architecture is. So you have the registration centers, which also double as the polling stations during Voters' Day. Then you have the district centers. So basically what happens is that because a lot of our registrations are done offline, right? At the end of every registration period, it may be a day, maybe a week, we transfer the data that we have collected onto sticks. They then take those USB sticks to the district offices, and then they are loaded from the district offices after some analysis have been done to the central data center which resides in Accra. Now, in order to do that, it means that all the regional or the district offices must be connected to the central database that sits in the EC's headquarters in Accra. And so you have connectivity between all of them, okay? And likewise, allows us to do things in a decentralized manner that we have currently now, and which is one of the challenges that the system had. And I'll take them one by one so that we get a proper view of the issues that the Electoral Commission now has. So these kits that we have, remember what I described to you. They've been in existence since 2011 at least. And they've all reached end of support. Okay, the biometric voter registration kits that constitute the laptop, the printer, the fingerprint scanner, they've reached their end of support.
Which means?
When a manufacturer says that I have reached end of support, essentially what it's saying that I no longer produce the device. I no longer provide support for that device. So you cannot get support from me. You can't get support from other third parties who want to. It's like how in the car industry, They have aftermarket people who produce parts for
But it's not exactly
It is
an
not
expiry
exact.
date.
No, essentially what they are saying is that that equipment, as it sits there, you may still use it, but we no longer support it.
Okay. Please proceed.
All right. So they've reached end of support. A large quantity of them too, obviously, if you've been using this thing for 9 years plus, obviously their machines, they will break down. Now, a large number of them have broken down. They have faulty parts. So, in essence, as a kit, we can't use them. What we've also realized is that the batteries have all run down. Remember I said that we do registrations that are offline. We go to riverine areas. We go to far-reaching areas that are difficult to access. Some may not have electricity. So the battery packs are very important. Unfortunately, over the years, those battery packs themselves, like any other device, has also run out.
Okay.
Okay? So the other issues you're having is that gradually the image qualities that you are getting from those sensors are deteriorating. And so it makes the generation of the templates also not the optimum that we would require. And therefore, on voters day, you have issues with verification. We have similar problems with the printers as is. So the BVD kits, they suffer the same problems that we've had with the BVR kits because they also have sensors that have problems associated with them.
We have done some 10 minutes now. If you can spend some 5 more minutes to run quickly through this.
The challenges.
The challenges, and then get to the new system that you propose.
Right.
And why, it's superior.
Okay.
And why that ought to be the path rather than an upgrade.
Sure. We also get the same amount of time to react?
Not exactly, but we should have sufficient time to deal with it. That's why it is only one issue discussion
today. All right. So remember I mentioned about the network systems, right? The network systems were based on a technology that is called VSAT. It's akin to your DSTV or your GoTV and all those satellite-based. In 2011, it was an okay technology, all right? But as we gradually moved from an offline system to an online system, we realized that that system was not able to support our needs. Because during registration processes, if there's rainfall or cloud cover, essentially the district offices are cut off. And you remember during the limited registration exercise, there was a lot of complaints about the system being offline. And it was purely because the VSAT systems were simply not able to cope with the amount of traffic that we were pushing across the network. Quite apart from that too, the servers and the design of the system itself inherently had a lot of problems.
Okay.
It wasn't something that was, if you like, a solution that was built. It was parts that were put together. We had different people who had put those parts together. So we had an ABIS or an AFIS system. We had parts that were developed by people from Israel. Others came from Netherlands and a few other places. So even when there were problems, trying to troubleshoot that problem was a nightmare because you had to keep bouncing from one person to the other, and a simple issue could take about 3 days for you to solve.
All right.
So essentially, we had quite a number of issues that we had. Paramount amongst them was the fact that even within the data center, all the equipment that we had there had reached end of service as well.
End of service?
Yes. All of them, with the exception of a few that had been just introduced.
What does end of service mean?
So there's end of life and there's end of service.
Okay.
End of service, like I said, essentially means that the parts are no longer available. The person who manufactured the device is telling you that I no longer make them again.
Okay.
So I can't even produce them for you if you want them. All right. And some of them had their service support and warranty levels expiring as far back as 2014.
Okay.
Okay.
All
so
right.
during the process, and it's important that we highlight these things, during the process of the limited registration exercise, for instance, we had problems with servers going down, that we now had to struggle to find parts to keep them up just so that we could get a registration process going. We ended up having to cannibalize certain systems so that we could take the parts out to put into those devices to keep them running just for the registration process to go on.
Okay.
All right. So, and it's the same thing we did with the BVR kits. The BVR kits, those parts that we found that were working, we took from some devices and put into the other device just to make sure that it worked.
Okay.
So those are some of the issues that we had, in addition to the other operational issues with regards to, for instance, the EC staff not being trained onto the system. They had no clue what was going on.
Even though you had signed a contract to have them trained,
it was never
they were
done.
not trained.
There was no,
so you didn't have staff who could
knowledge
handle these
at all.
Okay.
There was no knowledge transfer.
Right.
We didn't know what was going on. Everything was being handled by...
So now quickly
Yep.
justify the new system and why
Right.
it's superior.
So basically, when we looked at all the failure rates that were going on, the problems that we're encountering, the vendor then themselves came and said that we can upgrade the system for you and refurbish the system. Okay? So the obvious question is that, okay, despite all the problems that we are having, how much is it going to cost to do it? So they brought a bill, which was looked at, and we felt that this bill, just to refurbish and replace broken down equipment, didn't make sense. So an independent consultant...
How much are we talking about?
The bill that they brought was about 56 million.
56 million Ghana cedis.
US dollars.
US dollars, okay.
Yes. And that included rebuilding or sort of upgrading the data center, replacing DVR kits, DVD devices, and not just an upgrade. For some of them, it was just going to be a refurbishment of those ones that could be refurbished.
All right.
And then giving us new parts. So the commission looked at the figures that had been given and thought that they were too high. So an independent consultant who was incidentally involved in 2011 for the design of this current system that we had was brought in and looked at the figures and did a new system design together with a new architecture and looked at the price using market surveys and realized that the price that was being asked for a refurbishment and an upgrade was far in excess of us acquiring a new one. Mind you, with all the difficulties that we had with this current one.
And what is the estimate or the amount we are talking about here, which helps you for the new one rather than going to upgrade?
So I believe that the figure that was arrived at was somewhere in the region of about $36 million.
$36 million.
I need to confirm, yes,
Okay.
it's about.
Right.
Okay. So it was
You are
important.
two of you here, so it's not difficult confirming,
confirming,
things.
yeah. So looking at that, because mind you that the system that us was designed, if we were going to upgrade, we couldn't go anywhere else. Because the system itself was proprietary. We didn't have access to source codes, for instance, even if we wanted to change anything. And so if we had to go through the upgrade path, essentially meant that we had to stick with whoever it is that was
Right.
there. And that's the essence of it, upgrade and refurbishment.
And that would have cost the state
Exactly.
56 million United States dollars.
Thereabouts.
Okay.
So
and that your decision is that you reject that and rather prefer to spend 36 million US dollars for a brand new enhanced system.
exactly.
Okay.
So mind you that the brand new system comes with its own advantages. All right. In essence, we had learned from our mistakes.
Okay.
So in prescribing a new system, we wanted to ensure that whatever new system was put in place was a system that would not suffer the same deficiencies that the old system had.
Right.
So for instance, we decided that we were going to decouple the various components of the systems that made up the BBMS.
You'll have to pause in a minute.
Okay. So for instance, we decided that we're going to take the transmission away and give it to the telcos. That is their core business. They do it the best. Let them do it. The data center, give it to somebody who actually core business is building data centers and maintaining them. Give it to them. The biometric voter management systems. There are people who that's their forte. That's what they do.
Right.
Release a tender out, give it to them, and let them give us the best solution that we want based on our requirements,
Okay.
not what somebody wants to give to
All
us.
right, thank you very much. You're still here on Newsfile, and this certainly is your most authoritative news analysis platform. And you just heard Yao Ofori-Adjei, who is IT consultant to the Electoral Commission, giving us why we don't need the old system, why we have to jettison that completely, because as they use in their own terms, some of the components have become completely useless. And let's now hear from Bright Simmons. And Bright Simmons also, as I announced earlier, represents the 18 civil society organizations that attended a session organized by the Electoral Commission, and Yao here took them through the issues and, you know, all the points that he has gone through with us now, and even more. But they came out of that meeting issuing a long statement rejecting the EC's path to 2020 elections. So, right, listening to him, it does appear that there is no option, and that really the only option is what the EC has put on the table.
So you are absolutely right that the 18 CSOs represents, as far as I'm concerned, one of the broadest institutional spectrums we have in this country, from activists through all the way through to research-based organizations. It's quite obvious that they will not take this stance if the matters did not strike them as extremely important, and that their position as bulwarks against the misuse of public funds, the abuse of administrative privilege and discretion was not extremely strong. And I will go over the 5 major reasons why we disagree with almost everything that the EC has said. Almost everything. So 1, we are now in January 2020, right? The EC published a tender in April 2019. In fact, the tender has ended, and I presume they've done some evaluations, because it's now been, what, 7 months or more? Actually, 9 months. Now, if you've gone ahead, published a tender, that presumes you spent at least, I know the civil service fairly well. I've been following it now for a decade and a half. The civil service in Ghana does not publish a tender unless you spend at least 3 months in preparation. I suspect they spent at least 4 months in preparation. So as far back as December, they had decided they wanted a new system. As far as I'm concerned, they are currently engaged purely in a PR exercise to legitimize a decision they've already taken, because there's no consultation. You don't decide in December 2018 when you abrogated the existing contract, did your research and published your tender, which nobody has seen, so we don't know what the expression of interest was, which then led to the request for proposal. If you are in the media house, you are in Joy FM, one of the leading ones. Have you seen this expression of interest?
No, I have not.
Have you seen the request for proposals?
I have not, but we have been assured the last meeting with them Friday that we will be part of the process through and through.
It's been 8 months. Good. So nobody in this country, in civil society, in media, have an idea what is the research that has led to this outcome? Who are the people that were consulted? In fact, even as he was speaking, my very good friend here, very often I realized that he was not willing to mention names, etc. And I'll go through them one by one. So first, what we are engaged here now is a public relations exercise to legitimate the decision that's already been taken. Second, it's a focus on procurement as opposed to problem solving. So I call it the PMP model, public relations and procurement. That's where we are now, as far as I'm concerned. And everything I've listened to has reinforced that point. So that's our first problem with the issue situation. The second problem we have, and here I'll use an analogy, it's like a new CEO of Barclays comes into office and he says, we need a new branchless banking system. So I'm going to uproot the entire branchless banking system and implement a new one. Or a new CEO of Surfline comes into office and he says, we need a new telecom network. So what I want is I want to go out there, uproot the entire system and replace it with a new one. Our argument that this architecture is multi-component. It's not entirely true that the system as it was designed cannot be separated as far as vendor design is concerned. We've looked at architecture from HSB, identification, the Dutch company. We've looked at architecture from Genki. We've looked at the STL integration formats. There is every reason why, if we have problems with specific components for it, if we want to upgrade an ABIS, if we want to do some of these things, we can go to Genki as an example and work with Genki alone, because even though they were a consortium, that contract has been abrogated, there has been sufficient time if we wanted to deal with the independent actors that were involved to deal with them. Suprema supplied us with fingerprint scan device and the rest of them. I know people in Suprema who will be very happy to have a consultation around DVDs and the rest. And I'll go into most of those details as we proceed. So number two, if you have a network, and that's what it is, it's a network. You've got your BVR systems. Some of them are basically a laptop connected with peripherals. You've got your AB system in a data center. You've got the individual device and operating systems that are on them. For instance, Mr. J points out that when it comes to most of these systems, they are proprietary. Yes, the Windows on your computer is proprietary. And the Windows on that device is proprietary. But there's nothing that stops you from dealing with Microsoft when it comes to that device, because Windows is owned by Microsoft. Nobody, HSB, Jenki, and the rest cannot control Windows and say, because it's on our system, you have no right to go to the actual vendor of Windows and deal with them. Linux, Red Hat, and the like belong to other vendors, and there's a room if we want to upgrade, for instance, operating systems on those devices to go directly to vendors, etc. So I don't get that argument at all, and we'll go into them in greater detail. So to summarize that point, you don't uproot, stem, branch a system that is that elaborate and hope to implement a whole new system as opposed to incremental upgrades and surgical upgrades where it's most important. And that's our second point. Our third point is that this system actually has been undergoing continuous upgrades and procurement since 2011. I couldn't believe it when he said to me that the device started in 2011 and that was the end of it. I couldn't believe it. The degree of candor we need in public service means that if you know we had procurements in 2016, and there were some of the machines date from 2015 and the like, you need to mention it. It's incumbent on public authorities and public servants to be extremely candid. So you don't tell us that, the devices started in 2011, when we know, because I have read all your budgets. I've read every medium-term expenditure framework, and I've seen all your procurement plans and the likes, and I know that you've continued to buy equipment. In the Charlotte Osei affair, we saw the documents that were provided that showed that STL had made offerings to replace some of this equipment. In fact, the EC had gone ahead to do a procurement, which he had cancelled and then abrogated their contract and renegotiated down. So we know those numbers. So we know what was purchased, we know what was offered, we know the pricing, and everything that Mr. J has told us today is in variance with that record. So that's the third point, which is that we're making continuous purchases over time, including the VSATs that he mentioned. We've had procurement budgets to implement VSAT. Every time we have a new district, we need to implement a new VSAT. And some of those new districts have the VSATs. So clearly they must have bought some new VSATs. So it can't be that everything was bought in 2011. That's the third point. The fourth point we have is that Mr. J makes interesting references to error rates. And that discussion can get extremely technical. I'm going to try and keep it as simple as I can. And that is this. The key error rates in these matters that we've been apprised of is this issue of the false rejection rate. So your fingerprint is in the database and was properly captured, but somehow when you put your finger on the BVD, it says no. And I understand that the proxy for measuring the false rejection rate in this country is the manual verification. So if you attempt to do it and it doesn't work, they do a manual verification. He can explain to us if that is not a good proxy. If the false rejection rate is reasonably approximated by the manual verification process, and they have themselves told us that they do it at 0.64% false rejection rate, the point that every Ghanaian needs to understand is twofold. One is that the false rejection rate is dependent on the false acceptance rate. It's a calibration, it's a two-sided calibration equation. If you increase the false acceptance rate threshold, you improve the false rejection rate threshold. Why? If you tell the system that if the thing doesn't look perfectly like it, reject it, then what it means is that for some people that are truly registered, maybe the image was slightly degraded at edges or something like that, it will reject it as well. So part of that calibration process is our control. We have the means by doing some of the calibration to take policy decisions. Why? Because you cannot have 100% matching rates. It's theoretically impossible. I have looked at all the vendor testing for NIST. You know, they do a competition where they invite multiple vendors to come in and demonstrate their technology. I've looked at the last 3 or so, and I never saw a 100% matching rate. In that situation as well, we have a single index finger approach. So when you do the actual BVD verification, you are doing one finger at a time. Yes, it's true that when you are enrolling, you use multiple fingers. But when you are doing the verification on the day, my understanding is that it's a single index approach. Typically, a single index approach reduces some of your accuracy because it's the whole set of fingers prints together that increases the accuracy rate. Now, my argument is that if you are doing, let's say, a false acceptance rate of a certain degree, we can look at comparative systems elsewhere and benchmark what is their error rate. And I'll give you only 2. One of the key NIST competitions in recent times set the false acceptance rate to 0.1%, and they got a false rejection rate at 1.97%, significantly above our 0.64%. So it means that when you say that unless, for the people that are likely not to be true, only 0.1% of them should pass through, it increases the people who, even though it is true, the system rejects. And we know that because I've looked at the EKTP system in Indonesia very closely. That's the mandatory ID system in Indonesia. And where they set the system to 0.01%, it increased the false rejection rate to 3%. So the question is, you have to do calibration, and that process is a policy process. Somebody has to tell us what is today the false acceptance rate that we are using to calibrate it. That says that, okay, for people that are potentially not the right people, allow it through. What is that rate? It will impact the false rejection rate. And until we are told that, any numbers they give us is not really relevant. The second point I want to make is that to the extent that we have a system that is not 100% right, our way of determining whether we are improving or we are getting worse is to look at the conduct of the elections themselves. In 2012, when we first used the biometric protocol in the world, we were the first in the world in using biometric validation at the electoral polls. And the reason we were was that the Kenyans abandoned theirs, and they had a huge corruption scandal around their procurement for BVDs and BVRs, where the amount of money they were mentioning is like some of the amount of money that we've been told the vendors proposed to use. They abandoned that. And subsequently, what then happened is that they did not use it. And so we used it in 2012. And as far as every literature that I have reviewed is concerned, we were the first in the world. It was a newer system, right? It was a completely new system.
Okay.
Our failure rates then, in 2012, were the worst we've seen to date. Part of that is purely maturity issues. The more you use the system, the better it gets. Why am I saying it was the worst we saw? Because it was the only election in the last couple of years where we had failures to the point where we needed to postpone the election to the next day. You remember those days? 33% problem, 33% of polling stations had problems. And we had to postpone the election to the next day. We've subsequently not seen those kind of problems to the same degree. So every relevant indicator, from number of rejected ballots, etc., percentage of rejected ballots, etc., show that there have been improvements in terms of the management of the election with the same BVMS. So if we want to use the if we want to use the actual conduct of the elections as an example, then it shows that though the technology may be getting somewhat obsolete over time, at the same time, maturity in managing them is also improving, and they are balancing out. So it's an empirical point what you do around it. Last point, and that's our most important point. There's been a whole bunch of proposed costs that they've given. When he says to you that it's $56 million, you have to ask them, is that $56 million the result of a tender where the least, the lowest bidding proponent or the lowest bidder gave you $56 million? Where are you getting that number from? They claim that they wrote to the vendor, the integrator, STL, and the STL talked to HSB. And then having done that, they came to them with some numbers. Nobody has seen those letters. We don't know the context in which they were delivered. They said there was refurbishment that was there. We don't know the extent of refurbishment. We don't know anything. But the point is that that's not how you do things in the civil service. If you really want to do price benchmarking, do an RFQ process, not an RFP full tender. Just request for quotations from the 50 or so vendors that I have been tracking all around the continent, supplying the service all over. There's Demalog in this country. There is Laxton Group that just won in Zimbabwe, etc. If you do that kind of proper benchmarking study, as I have done, and as a lot of the people in the civil society research segment have done, you find out that the cost that we are saying is reasonable. It's actually very high. It's actually very high. So we know from 2005, when DRC got $2,500 per BVR kit, that's 2005, that over time, electronic costs go down. And it wasn't surprising that in 2010, Benin managed to do a procurement where the cost of the devices, even though the quantity was far lower than DRC, was still 2,700. And if you do that adjustment, it was then lower, based on volume. 2011, Sierra Leone, 2008, $2,800. Most intriguingly, Kenya 2017, look at the cost of the BVR solution, less than $750, because they're using a MOFO tablet, which is a completely new generation solution. So even if the EC claims that it needs to do a mass replacement exercise, the cost that you are proposing is nothing interesting.
I see. Right, so Bright Simmons, they're raising some quite...
Can I respond to this?
Yes, you would respond. And I see that you have taken note of a number of the issues that have been raised. And remember that we're having a holistic discussion, focusing on the issues so that you can make, an independent judgment for yourself, whether or not the EC's proposed approach is the best or not. I'll go to Dr. Shrebo and Clara as well. Of course, Yahweh J. Foreje has noted some points that he wants to react to. But because we are doing a holistic discussion and are asking questions, how much has this country sunk into the national identification system? Why is it that that is not the path to generating the data that all other government institutions that want to use it would, as it were, pipe into that system? There are others who have also asked the question. In fact, the National Identification Authority itself has claimed that nobody in this country has legal authority to collect biometric data except the National Identification Authority. We'll seek to answer all of these questions. And joining us to deal with that aspect of the discussion is Professor Ken Atefa. So, Prof, thank you very much for joining us on Newsfile.
Thank you very much, Samson, and good morning to your panelists and to your listening public.
Okay, so we understand that you are on the field and you are doing some work, so we need to deal with you now so you can move on and then we continue with our discussion. So the question that's being
really
asked...
appreciate your indulgence.
Right, the question that's being asked is that you and the EC were supposed to have worked together. EC is doing its own, DVLA is doing its own, SNIT is doing its own, everybody else is capturing people's biometric. This doesn't happen anywhere. You have captured so far over 6 million Ghanaians on your system, and your system is supposed to be multi-purpose. I was one of the lucky ones to have registered the very first time when you started. On a day, in less than 30 minutes, I got my ID card, hoping that I could use that to vote as well. What's going on?
Samson, thank you very much. You've said quite a few things. Let me address them systematically. First of all, NIA and EC are not at war. We are not at loggerheads. We are two institutions, separate and independent, but very conscious of the obligation of state institutions to ensure interagency coordination, harmonization, and collaboration as necessary and appropriate. And I can assure you that we have had significant engagements that have enabled us to understand quite clearly the areas of responsibilities and, of course, the areas of overlap as they impinge on the work that we have to do. I think that recent comments by some officials of the EC with respect to NIA being not time-bound and its data not being able to be relied upon have kind of a bit unfortunate, and I think muddying the waters a little bit. What has to be understood, and I've also seen a bit of headlines from a press conference I granted in Takrady yesterday, the caption of which also tends to confuse the picture a bit. Let me clarify a few.
Yes, and we do need you to clarify that, because I need to state this, that why is the EC not justified, for example, to not be interested in working with you at this time? You have spent 2 years in collecting 6.5 million, and the EC has 17 million plus to work with, and it has to do that in less than a year. How can it rely on you when you have spent 2 years taking only 6 million?
Okay, so that's all wrong. Just let me set it out properly for you. Number one, the law obliges NIA to undertake a mass registration exercise. That mass registration exercise is time-bound. The mass registration exercise started on the 29th of April 2019. Today is the 18th of January 2020. So that's not 2 years. The 2 years that you have in mind, I believe, it's a calculation deriving from when we did a liveness test of the technical system that we had inherited from the old Ghana card system, the technical system that we then expanded and used it to issue a card, a biometric ID card, to President Akufo-Addo on the 15th of September 2017.
Okay.
Since that time, we have done institutional registration and community registrations in Lankwantana, Medina, and those places, which enabled us to pilot. It was a piloting of the new expanded system in order to position it, to fine-tune and get us ready. We got ready and started on the 29th of April for the mass registration. At the time of starting Samson, we required under contract, this is a public-private partnership arrangement that is being used to pursue this Ghana card project. Now, at the time of starting, we required by our design 2,500 registration kits. Unfortunately, by the time we started, we had only 1050 machines. Hence, the fewer registration centers and the long queues and all the agonies that Ghanaians went through. Now, in the course of our work across the regions, government enabled us, having fulfilled the conditions precedent and having moved one of the conditions precedent into a condition subsequent, government then enabled NIA to acquire all the 2,500 registration kits that it needed to begin with, and also getting additional 3,192 registration kits. All these things came together by the time we're just about to enter the Ashanti region. So now we have a strengthened, a highly invigorated registration capacity. And so in Ashanti region, we were able to open 833 registration centers instead of the 350 registration centers that we did in Volta region, Uchi, Savannah, Northeast, Northern, Upper East, Upper West, Bono East, and Ahafu, and all of that. Now we have a better capacity. We have 15,000 workers out there sacrificing, going beyond the call of duty, and delivering the Ghana Card project. So right now, as I speak to you, we have gone beyond the figures that you were talking about. If you look at our performance within the last month in Ashanti region, as we speak, we have registered, as of yesterday, 7,301,193 Ghanaians. So the enrollment figure is 7,301,193, out of which we have issued cards to 4,262,471. We do have a backlog of some 565,030 cards to issue, and we have about 415,000 cards that are awaiting decisions because of various challenges with sometimes discrepancies between people's pre-existing data and the kind of data that they are submitting to us. So, but the assurance, the key thing is this: the enrollment that we are doing, it captures all the biometrics that the EC requires. So just a minute, please. It captures the iris, it captures the fingerprints, and it also captures the facial. All the things and all the biographic details that the EC could ever want. NIA is collecting all those things. The only thing that the EC needs, which the NIA doesn't take, is polling station number of polling station name. But that is as easy as ABC to get with technology. It is not a problem at all. It means that as of today, NIA can push to EC the data sets of all those Ghanaians, the 7.something million Ghanaians who have been registered and who are above 18 years. Indeed, as of now, about 94 to 95% of all the persons on the NIA register, the enrollment, the National Identity Register, about 94 to 95% are persons aged 18 and above. or who will be 18 and above by the time of voting. With a click of a button, you can push all that data set to EC, which can easily, with technology, add the polling station codes or numbers to them.
Very interesting, Prof. Very interesting, Prof. So that you say ultimately that the NIA has what the EC needs and that it is able to deliver for what the EC needs for 2020 elections. Is that what you say?
What I'm saying is the NIA is poised to deliver. The NIA is on course. With its invigorated capacity, the mass registration exercise is scheduled to end by the end of March 2020.
Okay.
When that is over, we will use the equipment and the personnel who have gained experience and all of that to set up by end of March permanent NIA officers in the regions, municipalities, and districts across the length and breadth of this country.
Do me a favor and hold on briefly for me. Let me bring in Dr. Srebo to ask you this question.
Yes.
Because as I understand from the EC, and I've asked, and the EC chairperson herself has explained that if there had been collaboration, and you had commenced the process on polling or constituency basis, it would have made it easier for them to be able, as it were, to tap into what you're using to progress the system rather than saddling the nation with yet 36 million to produce a new system. How is this the major problem why you are unable to use NIA's data? Let him hear so he can respond.
Thank you, my brother. I think we have been saying that our activities are time-bound. Time-bound here means that we cannot go beyond probably June. And
NIA will be done in March. You are beginning in April.
Something, a correction, please. NIA will be done with a mass registration in March. NIA, can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, NIA will be done with a mass registration in March. The mass registration started before this conversation started about whether you could use polling stations and all of that. Let us remember that the NIA is a creator of statutes.
That's right.
It obeys its laws.
Yes.
Its law does not require it.
Yes, but from your explanation, by March you are done with the mass registration, and the data is available for the EC.
We will do the remainder of the population through our permanent officers and the co-location with our cognate institutions such as EC itself, SNET, DVLA,
and what is the timeline for you on that? When do you expect to end that?
We expect to end all of these activities before June, or by the end of June.
By the end of June. Okay. So thank you, Prof. Just give us a few minutes. Let's hear him, and then you respond to him. Yes, Dr. Srebo.
Yeah. So like I was talking of, we are bound by time, and our register should be ready by the end of June. That is the worst we can, so that we can have time for exhibition. We cannot go beyond September when it comes to nomination. That's why we have been emphasizing. Now,
and so I can quickly add that for us, we are capturing people aged between from 15 and about 15 to infinity. It means that by the June that he's talking about, or perhaps even earlier, EC can extract the voter register from the national identity database, because we have people from age 15 and above.
Okay, thank you.
So by that time, it is easy to extract it.
Right, thank you.
The technology is easily available for that purpose.
Thank you very much. If you could let him finish. Yes, yeah. Doc.
So our register should be ready by that time. So let us assume that if their data is ready by March, let us assume, it will mean that we have to allocate the polling stations to the various people who have been registered. Because the choice of where to vote is the individual's choice, not me or anybody. So if the data is there by that time, we will have to go to the polling station and ask those people who have been registered to come with their ID cards. So they will then go to where they want to vote with ID cards. Then we can now compare the ID numbers. Then we go back to them for them to extract the various data for the various polling stations.
And that presupposes that they have the ID cards.
Sorry, say that.
I mean, that presupposes that they have the ID
card by that time.
That's what I'm heading to.
All right.
So they will have to go with the ID card because you cannot just come there and say that I'm a registered person with the NIA. So we are thinking that, looking at their speed. Now, from what he is saying, if I got him right, is that they have covered about 7 million.
Right.
And we are thinking of around 17 million. So we realize that they have not been covered half.
No, you see, he's saying that this is when they are now invigorated. They have received their 2,500 plus, kits that they need. And so they went into Kumasi, and within a short time, they have done a lot of work. So you can expect that now they are running with such speed that he assures you that by June, they would have completed the most important part that you need to finish up on the process that they are doing now.
See, we are not at war with anybody.
Correct.
But if I got him right, about 4 million people have gotten the ID card.
That's so.
So when are they? If they have registered 7.3, and they only 4.2 have gotten the ID card, and we will need the ID card. So the issue is that we are not comfortable with respect to when those data will be available.
Okay.
And you see, compiling register like they are talking of, it's a very tedious work. Anybody in the electoral commission will be happy that the data is ready, then we just extract what we want, and we can easily slip. But we are talking of, we have no opportunity to avoid conducting election in December.
Okay, let's have Prof finish up and then take leave of us. So, Prof, you heard what he just said.
Yes, I did.
You won't have the cards ready by then, and they will need people to come to the polling.
All those cards that have not been issued will be issued. All those cards, because we have the capacity, we are now. I mentioned the additional 3,192 machines. It means that we have the capacity to go back and let people assist. And let people get their cards across the country. That's number one. Number two, to do the kind of verification he's talking about, because we have people's 3 levels of biometrics: facial, fingerprint, and iris. When a person shows up, even without the Ghana card, even without the physical card, because all their biometrics are there, just putting a finger on a reader, on a biometric reader, will bring up the data to confirm the identity of the person on a one-to-one matching or on a one-to-many matching, both offline and online. Offline registration verification is available right now. Online registration will be available by end of March.
Okay.
Delivered, complete. And so all of these are matters that have been thought through. The conversations that we've had with EC, we got to a point, there was a conversation I wasn't part of and Mrs. Ginessa wasn't part of. But I think that when we have a chance to look at these technical issues, the mechanics of it, the science is there, the willpower is there, the desire to save the nation money and to save people the agony, all of these things are solid. And with a little bit more interagency cooperation and harmonization, we will solve. The point I'm making is, no, there's a difference between issuing a card, which is an EC mandate, and NIA doesn't have anything to do with that.
All right.
But the construction of the database is something that NIA is doing.
That's understood.
EC is at liberty.
That's understood.
To take that database and extract its voter register from that, and we will deliver so that EC can get the job done if it is inclined to doing so.
Professor Tefa, thank you very much for your time. We leave you here so you return to the field to do this job. And I'm asking you, Doc, when he says that they have done 7.3 million and they have in excess of 4 million cards in people's hands, are you not better off starting with that than you now beginning the process, fresh? You have 4 million to start with.
The 4 million out of
17 that you expect.
That is the problem. What I'm saying that anybody in the Electoral Commission will go to sleep and know that he's not going to go through the tedious work of compiling new register if the NIA issued. I'm part of the technical team that made them. And when we had the interaction, we realized that if we are to wait for the NIA, then what it will mean is that we are not going to have a register for the exhibition and the nomination and the election. That is why we said that, well, in that case, maybe in future when they are set, we can rely on their data. But for this year, 2020, we may be taking the risk of not getting the register if you are to depend on them.
Okay.
That's why we rule out.
I have to go on a break, but when I return, one of the questions I'll be asking you is, so why not pause, do an upgrade and manage, because you have the hope that you have an NIA who is going to complete the process. And we understand that when the new EC came into office, there was already, a contract to do an upgrade. And that was supposed to be for 56 million Ghana cedis. Ghana cedis. No, that's the emphasis.
That one was specifically
Ghana
for the
cedis,
referendum.
For the referendum.
Exactly.
And after the referendum, what was required was buying a few kits here and there to add on, and then you would take care of 2020 elections. So when I come, I'd like to know why you cannot pause to do that and then wait for NIA to finish, then everybody else, pipes into NIA. But before we take the break, let's have Clara give us 3 minutes of your thoughts. No, when we come back, you're going to talk.
Then let's
of your
come
thoughts,
back.
having listened to everybody.
No.
Okay, so if that's what you prefer,
if
that's what you prefer, then we take a break and return now. So viewers and listeners, as I already announced earlier, you can contribute and you will have the opportunity to ask questions at the appropriate time. And we will announce the contact details that you will have access to ask your questions shortly. These are the numbers that you can use to get to us and then ask your questions subsequently. So you can call us, not now, I will tell you when to call, but just take note of these numbers: 030-211-701, 030-211-701, 0302-211-702, 0302-211-703, and 0302-211-704. So from 701 up to 704. The number is 0302-211-70124. I'll tell you when to call, and we have some of your questions also. And the EC is here, and Bright Simmons, Clara, yet to have a take, are all here. We'll be right back after this break. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. My guest, Bright Simmons, Honorary Vice President, Imani Africa, and here representing the 18 CSOs who say the EC's arguments are deficient and cannot be relied on. Clara Berry Kasiti is legal consultant and law lecturer, yet to be heard, and Dr. Srebo Kweku is Director of Electoral Services, Electoral Commission, and Dr. Yao Ejay Ofori-Ejay is IT consultant to the Electoral Commission of Ghana. We had to go to Professor Ajiman Atefa, head of the National Identification Authority, to speak to. Of course, from what he says, we also know how some opposition political parties don't want to hear that it is the national identification card that may be used for the purposes of putting together a voters' roll for 2020 elections. We'll try to interrogate what the suspicion and mistrust is all about. But let's hear Clara Berry now. Yes.
Okay. Now, listening to the arguments back and forth, including the arguments that the EC had earlier on advanced, the main issue for me that came up was what Bright referred to. Is this a PR gimmick for a new register, or is there the need for a new register? Of course, I came to my conclusion as to what I think the reasons given. But before I share what my opinion is, I would like us to go through the legal framework for the EC so that we can everybody can independently assess whether we need a new register, or this is more or less that a decision had been taken to procure a new register and we just have to now find reasons to provide why we must take this. Now, why do we have the EC by law? We have the EC for one main reason, which is Article 42 of the Constitution, the right to vote. Because under Article 42, the Constitution gives the citizen the right to vote, provided you are 18 and above and of sound mind. Now, the body that has the main responsibility for making sure that we realize this right to vote is the EC. So the functions that the EC is set up is first and foremost to make sure that every Ghanaian who is 18 years and of sound mind has the opportunity to exercise their constitutional guaranteed right to vote. The functions of the EC are directly linked to this right. Now, if you come to the functions of the EC that are stated in Article 45, the main one that links to the right to vote, relevant to this discussion, is A, which is to compile the register of voters and to revise it at such periods as may be determined by law. Now, if you look at the Constitution, the clear wording of the Constitution, what was the intention? You compile the register once. And then after you have compiled the register once, you revise it. And why would you revise it? Of course, people will turn 18 every so often, and then they need to register as well. And then, of course, some people would die, and they have to be taken off the register. So if you look at the clear wording of the 1992 Constitution, the intention clearly stated in the Constitution was to compile a register. And then after that, you revise it. Now, since 92, what has the EC done? Has the EC compiled one register and been revising it, or we keep compiling, and then anytime we compile and you want to raise issue, we run back to Article 45 and say we have the right to compile? The intention was not to keep compiling and to keep compiling and to keep compiling. It was to compile and then to revise the register as time goes along. Now, of course, in compiling the register, what does what is the EC required to do? If you look at Article 51, it is mandatory for the EC to have a CI. The EC has to come out with a constitutional instrument each time when they are compiling the register. So if they are supposed to compile a new register with this one, the law requires them to have a CI.
Really?
Yes. If they are not going to, if they are going to do things that are different from what is in the CI, they must have a CI.
Okay, now you clarify. Because
yes.
CI 91, which they are using presently, has given room for continuous registration.
But from what they are saying, they intend to do things that are not in the CI 97.
It is.
Let her finish.
Because
what do they intend to do?
Because some of the issues that they are talking about from his presentation that he talks about, they want to do a lot more things in terms of biometric verification, people, all those other things that he...
Those are things that are already being done. The only new introduction...
No, wait. Okay. She has not mentioned what he says is something you are intending to do that the law does not empower you, for which you need a new law. So let her name that, and then we find out whether or not the law empowers you to do. They say they're going to add facial recognition as part of the authentication
verification process.
Verification
both
process.
at registration and verification.
Registration and verification. You say the new law does not make provision for that.
I'm saying that if they are going to add anything in this new registration that is not already covered by the CI, they must have a CI.
Okay.
So to the extent that they intend to introduce anything new in this proposed registration that they want to do, that is not already covered by CI 91, they will have to come out with another CI.
Okay. Please pause for me. Show us where you say that the addition of facial recognition at registration and for verification purposes is captured in the law.
The current law that governs our registration is CI 91, which was passed in 2016.
That's right.
Then it talks about compilation of biometric information, whatever. Then if you look at the interpretation, regulation 32. 32. It said that biometric information means the electronic template derived from the measurement and analysis of unique human body characteristics, including fingerprints, facial cuttings, eye retinas, and irises, and thumbprint measurement for the purpose of establishing a person's identity.
Okay.
So for us, we don't need any additional LI because this is enough for what we want to do.
Okay, so what additions, because if I understood the presentation right, this was supposed to make something better. What were the additions that were supposed to
The
make
only
it better?
addition that we were going to put in was the facial recognition.
It was a facial recognition.
That's the only addition that has been added to it.
Okay.
But
Everything else essentially remains same.
Okay.
So everything else.
This is good, education, but shall we open to section 72?
Of the
Yes,
Constitution.
this CI.
No, it doesn't have 70. It was
27.
Okay.
27.
Yeah.
Yes. So,
So
can we check 27
Yeah.
too?
27 to say that
yeah.
the procedure for certifying the register include the following: A, matching the fingerprints in the database of the commission by automatic fingerprint identification system. Then B, examine the facial and personal data of the applications with the, that is when we're doing multiple registration, with the multiple registrations by an education supervisor of the commission.
Does that suggest to you that you can use, the law allows you to do facial recognition verification?
Exactly. That's what we understand.
You see, it goes beyond that because when we do the adjudication process as well, remember that during the registration, there are some people who because they either don't have limbs or we cannot capture their fingerprints, who have to go through an adjudication process. Now, by adding that additional layer of facial recognition, we are able to do, without human intervention, some matching.
Okay.
It is not foolproof.
Right.
It is
So,
not
so that if you read the section he just
Yes.
read, the clear indication is that, the wording is that you do matching of fingerprints in the database. Matching of fingerprints. It does not
And
seem to suggest that you can match face.
I think there's some quick clarification we need to be aware of. Our system already has facial recognition. What they are talking about is automatic facial recognition. It's a
Automatic.
so often there may be confusion around what the current system is such that when you do the scanning, they have to look at your photograph.
Okay.
That is, for most countries in the world, the kind of facial technology that is implemented currently.
All right.
So the automatic facial recognition is something else entirely.
Okay, so Clara
That's
just
what
started. So,
Okay.
yeah.
No,
Yes,
sorry, I'm sorry.
No,
Can I just
I
clarify
think we're
one
interrupting
issue
her
with
too
regards-
much.
Exactly.
We're
Exactly.
interrupting her too much.
Exactly.
So just hold on.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Clara.
the point really is of course, because they made the argument that they want to make it better. But for me, it is not as critical as to, because for me, even what I understand of what the right to vote is that you just want to be sure this is the person. We don't need a lot of bells. We just need to be sure that we have a very confident system that we can be sure that this is who the person says she is, and then the person is allowed to exercise the right to vote. Now, when it came to, so we now come back to the issue of how the Electoral Commission has exercised its function to compile a voters register. I've heard a lot of the complaints that have been raised against the existing system, including the fact that one of it was that there was no knowledge transfer. So we paid for a service, and then you did not take the service. And so what happens at the end of the day? Now, what made it more interesting for me is that if we really had a problem that we wanted to solve, the discussions around the problem should have been more elaborate and more transparent, even including from Parliament. When EC came saying that we want to make a new register, and then we want this much to make a new register, I expected to see a lot more questions on why you need a new register when we have a biometric system going on, and we have the NIA going on. And most importantly, I expected Parliament to have called in STL, the one who is managing this, to clarify some of the issues that were being raised. Yes, you may be a private person, but if you are being paid money from the public purse, and there are questions surrounding your contract or the performance of your services to the particular public service that you are being paid from the public purse, I don't see why the people's representatives shouldn't ask more questions. Probably, if we asked more questions, we could find answers to some of the issues that they raised. So that brought to me whether we really had problems we couldn't find solutions to, or as usual, because if you look at the track record of the EC, it's like compiling a register is part of every cycle. Every 4 years, more or less, we want to compile a new register. So it was like, well, we have decided we've come to the time again, let's compile a new register. And then what will we tell the public?
So that is to say, you choose not to believe what they are telling you about the nature of the systems that are at end use, some of which have become obsolete, some of which have become, they say, useless. And that this is proprietary software.
Not that I choose not to believe.
You cannot even migrate, even if you wanted to migrate.
Not that I choose not to believe. It's not convincing. It's not persuasive. I mean, this is a technological age. Like I said, if they brought all concerned parties for a transparent discussion, I'm sure that answers would be found to these.
You pay them to do work for you. If they took you to the elections with the register they say is unreliable, it's not fit for purpose, and trouble came because of the register, and because that what they wanted to introduce you resisted, you will blame them.
Because also the reasons they are actually giving for this actually cause more concern. Now, if you are talking about the issue of competence, because part of the questions that, the issues that the chairperson raised when I listened to some of her tapes was the fact that they didn't have the expertise in-house.
And it's the same IT team that has been there for all this while, and they are complaining about all these problems.
And that is my concern, because you are telling me that a system you have been working with since when? Since 2011. You don't know that one well enough. But you plan that when you get a new system, in less than 1 year, probably in less than 9 months, you would have mastered that new system so well that you can do better. It's not convincing.
No, they say we have worked with the system. We have gotten to points where we have had to manage. He says they have had to even cannibalize some of the kits, some of the BVDs, right?
BVDs, BVRs.
BVDs and BVRs to be able to do what? To give you a semblance of what works.
Yes, and besides, we're going to a referendum when? We would have had a national referendum, actually, for the whether or not to amend the constitution with respect to the partisan politics in district assembly elections. Right. Which register were we going with, and which equipment were we going with a referendum? A referendum is more or less like a national election.
That's right.
So, exactly, very important issue. Were they prepared? Are they suggesting that they were not prepared for that referendum or not?
Can you answer that question to Clara?
No, I think let me make.
I'll note it and have him and have you answer it.
Let me make
because
some of the
you use
points.
the same system you complain about for the district level elections.
Nearly a dozen elections so far.
Yeah, district level elections, and before the district level elections, you had used the same thing for the creation of new regions and so on. So that's actually a legitimate question. Yeah, Clara, go on.
They suggest on issues with this contract that they executed. When I listen to the excuses they are giving under the second arrangement, you get the impression as if this is a law that was imposed on them that do A, B, C, D, rather than this was a voluntary contract that you negotiated and entered into. Exactly. That you negotiated the terms that are in this contract, and you voluntarily entered into this contract because you thought they were the terms of the contract were satisfactory to you. It doesn't make sense to me, because the arrangement they have was not thrown at them. It was an arrangement they negotiated and entered into every contract.
There's a completely new management at the election.
No, let's not do that to ourselves. Let's not do that to ourselves. When we have institutions, we grow. We cannot afford to keep starting over and over and over again. That's not how we grow.
When you've discovered a wrong, you deal with it.
Yes, if you discovered a wrong in that contract, is that contract a public document? It should be a public document.
Exactly.
That contract should be a public document. And I am almost confident that the contract would provide in the contract for how to resolve issues that arise. So let the EC make that contract public for all of us to see. Let the STL, let STL be willing to be called to come and speak to the issues. The truth is, we can't afford to keep doing this procurement of a new register. Besides, yes, I understand some of the issues that are coming with NIA, but we must have a plan. Yeah. So we must have a plan to work towards a long-term solution. We just can't afford to have public institutions each doing their own thing. That is an underlying problem. We just talked about that in the road safety. It's an underlying problem. We have to stop that because it's not helping us. It's not as if we are a country that have so much resources to spare. We don't have that much money to spare. So one thing, all our state institutions have just one client. That one client is the people of Ghana. So there is absolutely no reason why they should not be able to collaborate. So yes, even if they are not very sure that the NIA, you will have to find a way of working together. There is a difference if you are interested in solving the issue and you bring NIA on board and all the other public institutions on board, and we decide that this is what we want to do. We will find solutions.
Okay,
but,
so they suggest to you.
But,
yes.
But if you decide that this is what I want to do, you are going to have excuses for everything that comes up.
Okay, so they suggest to you that it's not a mere excuse. That even if they were supposed to go with the upgrade that you support, you would know that they would need this STL, so to speak, because they are dealing with a proprietary software. So imagine that they are able to break that and get them to assist in the process. If they were doing the migration or conversion, you would have data loss, particularly when the system, you're dealing with old things that have to be cannibalized and all of that, there will be data loss.
I am sure that when it comes to those data issues, I will leave it to the IT experts. I am sure in this technological age, it can be solved.
And they say doing
sure
that costs you more than getting a new system.
The discussion on cost is misleading.
Yes, because
it
nobody
is
has
completely misleading.
Request for quotations.
Exactly. Apart from the quotes that they are even giving, which we are not privy to because of the transparency issues that we don't know about. Now, even let's grant them, assuming without admitting at all, that what they say is the issue. We are talking as if once we make this new register, that ends it. If you make this new register, you are still going to have limited registration because as people turn 18, they have to register. So you are still going to have to take out names. So there's still going to be upgrading. What's the cost of that one? We haven't discussed it because we haven't got to that bridge. Okay. So the discussion on cost is completely misleading.
All right.
I think we have to just, like we said, get to a system where we decide that, look, all state institutions can collaborate. We can't afford to keep making a new voters register. It's just not reasonable.
So, yeah, I'll come to you and to Bright as well, but you wanted to make an intervention when Clara was speaking, and yes.
I think was it the issue about why don't you wait for the NIA to compete, or which one?
You can take it from the bottom part, where you have complained that even if you are going to do the conversion or migration of the systems, there will be data loss, and that's expensive.
Yeah, but I wanted to write to first. I think we've all established that the new introduction of the new facial regulation doesn't need any law change, because this one is enough to capture that.
Okay, there's somebody else who disagree, but you have at least sufficiently explained.
I think I also put it down here that there was a question about why don't you wait for the NIA to complete the work, and I've always been talking about time bound, and even the NIA issue, we will need to do a lot of consultation because it is not an issue of NIA has finished and everybody will agree that use it. So if we want to go by the NIA, assuming we finish the match that we are talking of, we need to do a lot of consultation for the acceptance of the data before you can start using that one.
Consultation for the acceptance of the data, what do you mean by that?
Oh, but you are in Ghana. And I can say clearly that you know there are some people who are objecting to even the ID, the method that using the NIA card as part of proof of eligibility for our comparison results, some people are kicking against it. When it is not only proof of eligibility, as one of the four. People are kicking against it. So if you want to say that, let's do wholesome transfer of the NIA data to us. Like I said, we will be comfortable, we can sleep because the tedious nature of going to the referendum will be lost.
There are times that people have raised questions and you have pointed to them the Constitution that says that you are independent and you are not subject to the direction or control of anybody. Why is it that on the issue of those who may have issues with you're relying on the national identification card, you can say the same to them, and you probably will get good support from the people.
If everybody were to agree with what we are saying, then we shouldn't be here. Means that immediately we say that we are going, then we should go. Because we don't care about what people say. We care. That's why we do a lot of engagements. But what I'm saying is that anything that you want to do, you see, People compare this assembly election referendum with general elections.
It's not the
I
same.
beg to differ. Seriously. Because if you talk of national elections, you know what has happened to other countries. And they were not as a result of this level election. So we are in the, I don't know what to say, the center of the issue. We have our data, we have our records, and we see that if care is not taken, and we have to go with this system, we are going to have a lot of serious challenges in 2020.
So you were ready to risk in all the other processes, district level election, referendum, everything else, but this one, you don't want to risk it. That's what you're saying.
Because for the referendum that we are all talking about, is if it is consensus. Because if you talk of the creation of the new regions, we read that people will raise a lot of issues, but because almost everybody agreed that it should be done, it didn't end. We are talking of a country where people win election or lose election by 3 votes. 3 votes. In 2008, the difference between the two candidates that led to the second round was less than 30,000. It was when we did the second round that Professor Mills beat
when you went to time.
Yes. That the difference became about 40,000. And we are talking of national general elections.
They say they want to be convinced. How come, when it comes to the 2020 elections, you seem to be so certain that the system will crash, and yet for all the others, you were able to manage the system, as you say?
That's what I'm saying. We know how we suffered to put the data in place for us to do the referendum.
So share with us so we can
carry that along. Because he was in the center of the cannibalization, that he can talk to them better. But I know that we had to use about 6 months to put the system in place before we did the district level election. And some of the risks that we took at that time, sitting here, if you ask me to take for the general election, I will not do it.
Okay.
So, like I said, and even the district level election that we are talking of, do you believe that as a number of about 20 of such cases in court? 20, the district level election.
Okay.
And we cannot take that risk to general elections. I know clearly that 2020...
The contests you have in court, the challenges you have in court, they are related to
the
register?
margin of difference, yes.
To the register?
No, margin of difference.
No, are they related to the credibility of the register?
It links to, because without the margin of difference, if somebody said, I don't understand that I lost by 3 votes, then you go into it, what happened? There were manual verification, that. So there are a lot of issues that are coming up. But I said that this level election, the propensity is not high, I don't know the word, but the temperature is not as high as general elections. Okay. So we want to, 2020, by all means, somebody will lose.
All right.
Somebody will win.
Look, I know there are issues you noted from Bright Simmons you want to respond to.
Let me start.
But before that, this is what Professor Tifa tells us. Even though they have 7.3 million, they have 4 million cards. You say it's the cards you will need. He suggests to you that the 7.3 million data collected, 63% of people who registered have brought their ID cards. So they have their voter ID numbers, which means 63% of the 7.2 million records can, be ready for polling station numbers to be extracted from. If you are looking for the pictures, they say they have collected pictures. So face recognition is ready.
I have to hide it.
Yeah.
Right. So let me start off by saying that the last technical meeting that was done between the Electoral Commission and the NIA, I was part of that meeting, and we discussed the various integration ways in which we could actually integrate both systems, right? Because as has been said, we've said that the Electoral Commission is not interested in the business of registration. It is it's too much of a headache that if somebody will take it up, we would prefer. So on that score, we're in sync that we want to collaborate with the National Identification Authority to ensure that they would harvest that data and they would use it. But the question was that, will they be ready in time for us to be able to compile that new register for us to use for the 2020 general election? The feeling at that time was that we did not think so.
You have not yet started. He says, he gives you the assurance that they are ready.
I'm coming. This was in December. At that time, some of their registration kits, the additional ones that were bringing, had not come in yet. So for somebody who is supposed to, it's time bound by certain milestones to be able to generate a register for the 2020 election, I think that would have been foolhardy on our part to say that we would wait for them to finish per chance.
How about now? Now
That
they
they
say they are ready,
I'm
and they say they can now transfer minimum 100,000 daily to EC if you put your link.
I'm
you
coming,
know, on for them.
and those links were discussed. We actually even discussed how we would integrate the systems. It was discussed, but per their own admission, they even said that when they did an analysis of the ones that they have registered so far, there were people who had registered with, like more than four people at some point in time had registered with the same voter ID number. Now that needs to be interrogated if you are going to integrate those two systems. The next question is...
Your process will not be foolproof.
It's not, but the point I'm making, the other point I'm making to that process itself is also not foolproof, and it's not without adventure.
You're going to start in April. He says by March, they expect that there will be only 4 million left to be captured, and they can take care of that through their continuous process.
Granted, but the other point that we need to remember is that at which point, because mind you, the data that they collect doesn't have the polling station codes in it. There are about 29,000 polling stations. Do they have 29,000 registration devices? Or are they going to do them in bits and pieces?
You can't take the data and for the purposes of your exhibition that you do, ensure that you are able to identify people into their
No. So
their
we are
stations.
talking about the processes. So I'm walking you through some of the processes that we need to do. So if we are going to, if say today NIA comes and says that I have all the data that you require, what is missing is the polling station number. Let the people come and bring their voter IDs. And then we will,
national ID.
their national IDs to the polling stations where they are and say that this is my polling station, so put me into this polling station. How are you going to do it?
Reading your material, you suggest that you are not going to abandon the register.
No, we are not.
Okay. People are holding ID cards generated on this register,
Yes.
which the NIA is using.
Yes.
What's the problem?
So
Explain.
that's what I'm saying, that we have discussed both, for example, things like sharing, what you call it, databases, or even using our AFIS against theirs and doing matches. Those things have been discussed, but hasn't yet materialized because we need to be sure that whatever action that we take, we will not be disenfranchising anybody. And so there must be some harmonization process that would go on.
Okay.
That harmonization process hasn't been thought through yet as we speak.
All right.
All right.
Deal with the
we are
issues
not-
you
and we are
noted
not even
from
sure
Bright
that
Simon, so we
it would work.
can bring him back.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's the bit about
Then
the
we'll go
NIA.
to the phone lines and
I
speak
think
to an
that
expert
I think
about
Bright,
some
I
of
think
these
that Bright
things.
Simmons
Another
and
aspect, I mean.
their CSO have not done the public a lot of good.
Okay. Why do you
Because
say
I
so?
think that if they had taken their time to actually understand the issues that we have raised, we wouldn't have some of these discussions that we are having. And I'll make a point. The CSOs make a point that we are misusing public funds. It's clearly in their statement that whatever it is that we are doing is a misuse of public funds, and that we are procurement junkies. That's what you describe us as. Yes.
No, we say we don't want procurement junkie gigs.
Well,
so not that you are
in
procurement
essence, that's what you are saying. How is it that if indeed we wanted to misuse public funds, it would have been very easy for us to say that, carry on, old vendor STL, we will do the upgrade, as everybody else wants us to, even though per analysis we think that wasn't the best option. We could have said that, and then would have lost significant amount of money per
Still has
assessment.
a lot of enemies in this country, so I'm not surprised that it was abrogated. This is the second time.
It is your assertion, please. And the thing that you need to understand is that we did this looking at the public interest. Okay. Now you say that nobody has seen the tender documents. I'm surprised that they will say this.
The CSO community and the media.
I'm surprised because that document was published. It was on the PPA portal. It was readily available.
I've been to the PPA portal. it's
Even people.
not. Can you ask them to check?
The announcement of the tender.
Yeah,
was
but
there.
that's the point. They
Yes.
don't announce it, but not
But
the
if you are
EOI.
interested-
So
but if you are
that
interested in
it
what
is
is
there,
going
it is
on-
there right this moment.
No, the announcement of the.
But I don't think it's 5 lines.
I'm coming. You know where to get the documents.
Where?
Over 30 people came to the records, came to the EC to acquire those documents. Those
Vendors.
documents, yes, vendors, those documents, but if you are interested, mind you, they didn't have to buy, only those who intended to bid actually paid for those documents.
Well, you put
For
5,000
those-
CDs there. So as soon as I
Yes,
saw that, I don't have
but,
money.
But Bright, you are at liberty to come and examine the documents before you buy it.
How can I examine a document that says it costs 5,000 CDs?
No.
If you
but
want
before,
to make it
no,
transparent,
please,
just publish it.
Please. Before you get there, you can examine the documents. Lots of people actually came for the documents. The EC even went a step further for those who were interested to give them the documents. If you want a soft copy, I can give you one now. But the point I'm making, but for you to suggest,
Okay, you finish it.
but for
now,
you to
yeah.
suggest that all this has been shrouded in secrecy, it's unfair. When all you had to do as civil society organizations, nothing stopped you from walking to the Electoral Commission and engaging us and finding out what you wanted to do and the rationale behind it. Others did. Why didn't you?
I'll respond.
Okay. Now, this bit about facial recognition. They make it sound as if the facial recognition that we want to add is supposed to supersede the fingerprint. No. All we are saying is that the facial recognition system is an added on. It's an added on to an already existing biometric system. Why not use it? Facial recognition even affords us the ability, if it is properly designed, to detect underage people who are underage that have been, who attempt to register. On top of that, all the devices that you have now for biometric verification now come with cameras. That capability is there. If that capability is sitting there, why not use it? Does it not just make sense that you can decrease the amount of rejection rates, or if you like, manual verification rate, taking out the human element when a feature already exists in the device? Why not harness it? What is wrong with doing that? And how can you say that it is superfluous? Do you understand? Now let's go to the individual systems. I'm telling you that the Jenkins system that it has here does not do facial recognition. The databases that are there, and I've seen them, and I have the relationship diagrams. If you want to see them, I'll show them to you. They do not, it doesn't have facial recognition capability. Maybe now, the system that they have, and I've looked at the system that they have now, it's a fully integrated system, can do that. Mind you, Jenkins themselves came for that tender. They applied to bid for that tender. Nobody stopped them. Did anybody stop them? Even though they were already in the system, they came. Because like once you said,
They didn't come with STL, right?
No, they didn't.
Good. That's the point I was making.
They didn't. That's what I'm saying. That nothing stopped them from coming. They did come. Do you understand what I'm
We
saying?
don't know any of this stuff, so when you finish me, I'll react.
But that's the point I'm making. That if you want the information, before CSO went out to print that document that they did, I think that CSO would have done this country a good service if they had come to the Electoral Commission, engaged.
Okay,
and
so
asked
you're
for these
repeating that.
documents.
You're repeating
Okay.
that.
Now let's move on. Let's move on.
There's a question. I think I can begin putting people's questions to you now. There's a question. Someone is suggesting that what you're doing says that in modern day and age, nobody maintains a data center infrastructure anymore. It's waste of money in procuring hardware and maintenance for same. Money service providers is it prime data centers, primary data centers, and cloud is the way to go.
Yes, that question has been asked.
Yes.
And here's a simple answer to it.
And part of the cost of what you're doing is because you are building a data center.
Exactly. And mind you, that data center we are building at about half of what was proposed to have been built.
Half of what was proposed to have been built.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, here's the question. You have a system that is linked to something that everybody is passionate about. Okay. The suggestion has been made that we could have put our systems, or we could have hosted our sensors in the NITA data center, for instance. Okay. Now, this NITA data center is government controlled. And therefore, the perception out there is that if the data is sitting in a government controlled facility, it is easy for governments to interfere with the system. We don't want that tag. That is number one. Number two, if you understand the way hosting services do, you provision what you want, and it is a shared service, all right? Some of the things that we do, for instance, our biometric matching, requires high processors, and sometimes we even use graphic processing units to help aid with the processing. Those services are not something that is, it's not an everyday server. Does NITA have that capability? We don't know. Now, on top of that, there's some of the services that we do that require close proximity with our data set, with our service, which, for instance, the high-speed printers that we use to print the registers, they are in close proximity with our servers because we need to push large amounts of data to them at that time. If our printers are sitting in our offices here, what sort of bandwidth is available between the time?
Okay,
as
no,
we're able to achieve
explain
that?
this to me in a
Now,
minute.
let me land
explain
with
this
the
to me
cloud.
in a minute, and then I'll go to Bright. The total cost of refurbishment of the old data system was supposed to cost, as you say, 19.
Thereabout.
19. Is it 19 million?
19 million. Yeah.
19 million US dollars.
Okay, so this is,
and the new one is supposed to be 7 million. Okay, whose figures are we using?
So once again, the figures that we had for an upgrade and a refurbishment of the data center, plus the 4 million maintenance cost every year, was
That's
offered,
from who?
That was offered by STL.
Okay, which you don't like?
Which we don't like.
Because you can get it for 7 million.
So basically what we did was that we looked at what we required and went out and got systems, specifications for systems that ended up in a tender, and then the tender was recently awarded.
What you're saying
Yes.
is that when STL gave you 19 million, you have checked elsewhere.
We've checked elsewhere.
And the least you can get is 7 million.
Yes. So we did our own benchmarking. And so for the CSOs to suggest that we are using just the benchmarking that came from a vendor that has its own interest, it's misleading.
Okay.
Because we actually did market surveys. And it is based on the values that we got from the market surveys that we decided that whatever value that these guys were giving us was simply not correct. Okay. He mentions Kenya, for instance. And you see, it's good for you to compare apples and not apples and oranges. The Morpho tablets that he mentioned that was used in Kenya, a unit cost of that tablet was about $717.
Okay, so you hold on at this point.
Have you seen the catalog?
Now, hold on at this point. Hold on at this point.
I have the actual documents.
Right.
It's not $717. It's
Thank you.
That's the device.
But hold on there for me.
How much the EC?
Right. Hold on for me.
$3,500 is what you claim.
Hold on for me. Hold on for me.
What is $400?
Thank you
If you
very
take the whole
much. You're
component plus all the
still
peripherals and the
watching
right typeface,
everything. You're still watching and
No, it's not.
Gentlemen, you're still watching and listening to Newsfile, and Newsfile is brought to you by the kind of sponsorship of MTN. Everywhere you go, they say be a bit patient and they will sort out your problems for you. Star Assurance, your solid partner, Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner. Istiqbal, that's quality beyond measure. Amen Scientific, God is the healer. GIA, always remember, insurance companies, claims payment are business. So I take my next break here and I return, then Bright Simmons will again respond to some of the matters that have come up. He's taking a couple of notes, so he will respond to them, and then we'll speak to US-based cyber experts who will give us some perspectives as well. Then we'll open the phone lines for you to ask the EC your questions. Of course, you can also ask Bright your questions. Clara is here. If you disagree with her on some of the points she raised, you can also ask your questions. We'll be right back. This is Newsfile. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, and we're dealing with whether or not there is a need for a new elections management system as proposed by the Electoral Commission, as against the suggestion by CSOs and the opposition for an upgrade. The Electoral Commission has made its own calculations and comes to the conclusion that the country will be saved over 173 million Ghana cedis if it did the new one, then resort to an upgrade. An upgrade, it seems to suggest, is actually not an option. So we'll hear from Bright. He took a couple of issues that he wants to respond to. And then we will hear from Dr. Samuel Boateng, cybersecurity expert and CEO of Slam Technologies. He's based in the United States of America. And then we will come to you to have you ask your questions, put your questions to the Electoral Commission. Yes, right.
Thank you so much. So before I react to the specific issues that Dr. J raised, I wanted to point out something that Clara said about policy coherence, which has been a major pet peeve of ours as well. 2016, a biometric audit was conducted in the EC. The then administration required that an end-to-end evaluation of the entire biometric system be conducted. We know for a fact that none of the results suggested a root, stem, and branch reform of the system. We know for a fact. And if they are the disputers, they should put that report out. So clearly, after a very detailed, independent observation had been done, this was not on the agenda, which is why when you look at all their strategic plans, and I've looked at all their strategic plans, all their procurement plans, there was never any attempt to do an end-to-end replacement. All the things that you see are buying new BVRs to replace the ones that are truly damaged, buying new BVDs, and they have been buying them. At one point, they did a procurement for 40,000 BVDs in the last couple of years. 2015, in the 2015 election, a good chunk of the BVDs that were used, the verification devices, were new. So what my argument is that if you look at the overall trajectory, continuous upgrading and continuous improvement has been the strategy. And organizations of that nature, we should let them have strategies and stick to them. Sudden abrupt shifts without thorough consultation is not very useful. The other preamble I also wanted to point out is that, to react to Professor Tefua's points, the key point that Professor Tefua is making that is not being reflected in the discussion is that if you really wanted this to happen quickly, then give him more money. The money that you are asking for, take 1/3 and give it to him. If you give it to him, he'll buy more BVRs, he'll hire more people, and he'll finish his thing ahead of time. So already this country is committed to $124 million.
But is that allowed? That Parliament approves money for the use of the EC for a specific project,
the EC
and then they
enters into a
decide
procurement contract with the contractors of EC.
NIA.
And having done that, Demalog and the rest, you make sure you subject them to strict tests, and they come up with the most cost-effective device because you are buying more.
All right.
The point of the matter is that this country has spent $120 million. To date, we've disbursed about $105 million to the NIA in the last couple of years. I'm not counting the $100 and something million that we did in times past.
Had nothing
People forget
to
that in 2010, between 2010 and 2015, we registered 15 million people in NIA. And in this country, 15 million people. Disbursed almost 3 million cards. We've thrown much of that away. We have kept the one that has the 2D barcode. When we then went on the field to register, it was discovered that some of the data was still there. Now, new people that were registering were putting different data. That is what has caused the adjudication problem. It's the backward integration. So we have a problem where we start something, we build a whole thing, and then we don't really continue with it carefully. We try and do a completely different thing. Then now, it's almost like nature rebelling, saying, look, now the adjudication of the, almost 500 and something thousand that has to be done. The people that have used, they have their fingerprints are already in the system, but the names that they are bringing and other things are different. Has to be costed. And the reason that is happening is because you're always trying to do backwards integration. And that is important that we keep in mind all the money that is being spent and be extremely vigilant and alert about saving money. You don't spend $120-something million to do a national ID program with the view that that data will be used by other state agencies. And when the time comes, we're not making extra efforts to get that to happen. Now, to answer point by point the issues raised by Dr. J, I think that Dr. J has not been fair when he says that SCSOs have not been diligent in seeking information. As I've tried to explain, our publicity on this process was completely lacking. We did a content analysis to try and see how many mentions, for instance, do you have on the the procurement process, the tender that was published in April 2019. How many news articles mention the number of people that are bidding, the names of the companies that were bidding, the names of the long list, or the people on the long list, the names of the short list, who had performed better on technical and financial, etc. 0, 0, 0, 0.
Really?
Yes, we can't find them. And if DC knows of these articles, they should share them. Because when we did that, my argument was that if you had a publicity and transparency indicator in your strategic plan for that process, it will flag it up. Because one of the things will be media mentions. Why is there no media coverage? Then let's maybe do more awareness creation. So without that creation, most of us were not aware. That's the truth. It is when these controversies started, we said, what is going on? And it's in the course of research that we realized that actually they've already been going through the tender process. They're just about to announce who had won. And in the process of making sure that when they announce it, there will be no problem like, what just happened? They decided that they're going to soften the ground for the announcement. So my argument is all of this exercise is not really consultation at this stage. It's purely public relations to soften the ground for the announcement. And that is important. So when I make that point, I'm not being unfair. And some of his comments, Dr. J is trying to suggest that we don't know what you are talking about. There's a bunch of clueless CSOs that are just, no, that's not true. I myself am a technologist. I've been doing technology development for 15 years. There are a lot of people in the group that are technologists, particularly in technology procurement. Kofi Bentil in this country has been a long time IT consultant. There are many other people that are technology savvy in the system. Of course, we have other interests. Just as my good Dr. J, he has an interest in antimicrobial resistance. And we like that he's polymorphic and is able to do multiple things. It's possible that all of the CSOs, despite their other commitments and the rest, will take an interest in technology and study it. So when he say that, oh, look, if we had been truly diligent, we'll have had information and the rest of it, it appears to suggest that we've done shoddy work.
They actually accuse you of not being willing to to listen and change your position.
No, that is separate. He said that
because when they called you to the meeting,
we will have known these matters and will have come.
No, I'm talking from a different platform.
Okay.
When they called you to the meeting at Alisa, you barely left the grounds, and then you issued a tall statement, which suggests that you had the statement in your pocket.
No, we had
came there with a statement.
No, we had various drafts.
You didn't even factor in all that they sought to, share with you.
No, that's not true, because as Dr. J himself has shown, there were several drafts, all of them depending on different views within the civil society groups, based on what we've heard so far. He knows very well that the one that was finally published was not the one that we were going to publish, because having come to that place, we decided some of the issues required further interrogating. We couldn't agree on a uniform statement based on the initial drafts. So we had a simplified one that we shared with the media.
So there were people with dissenting views?
Of course, there were people with dissenting views, based on the inputs that had come, not necessarily that they disagree with the overall position, but they wanted additional information on specific claims we were making.
Okay.
Now let me make a quick run through the specific issues that you raised.
How many of them do you want to do? And I need you to do
I'll do them in very quick.
Quick, so that I'll go to Dr. Boytik on the phone line.
So when I say that automatic facial tech is already available in the system that we have, and in almost every other system, what I mean is that when we say facial recognition technology, there is a manual facial recognition technology that we already have been using for years, dating back to the very early days. And what is that? That is when you scan the barcode on the card and you start the process, a picture comes, and you look at the picture and do a visual inspection. That process is called facial recognition technology.
Yes, the law actually backs it. The law actually backs the manual verification.
That facial recognition technology, when you look around the world and you see some other jurisdictions using facial recognition technology, that's what they often mean. The automatic facial recognition technology, which is the new thing where they do your analysis of your face and take coordinates and try and do it, nobody actually uses for elections today.
That's not true.
No, it's not true, because
That's
I checked
true.
very carefully. I know that Somaliland, that's Iris.
Even with Kenya, they did use it.
No, but they use the manual visual inspection. Not would they take a picture of your face
please
and
check,
then
please check
I
your
checked it
facts.
very carefully.
Please check your facts.
But that's
because
fine.
even with the Kenyan one, they did.
We will do a fact checking. If all your crew can do a fact checking. So my argument is that the facial recognition technique is not something out of this world. We already have a version which is manual. They are proposing to do an automatic facial recognition technology, and the argument that has been made is that because the human face is not persistent compared to fingerprints, or much less compared to iris scans, the quality and the accuracy of today's facial recognition technology, automatic facial recognition technology, is somewhat limiting. Because it's limited compared
to the human.
I'm coming. Because it's limited compared to the fingerprint and the iris. If you want to do a backup, then use a backup that is stronger, but maybe more expensive or maybe more cumbersome. You don't use a backup that is weaker, because the point if this fails, we go to the other one. So that one might be stronger. That's the argument we're making. You may disagree on policy grounds, but I just wanted to clarify that. The other point is that Dr. J points to the fact that for a long time, they have a vendor logged in situation and a vendor lockout situation. They are struggling to do things. The vendor is not collaborating and the rest of it. The truth of the matter is that you terminated the vendor's agreement in 2018, December thereabouts, or maybe even slightly earlier.
It ended.
You've had it ended and you didn't renew. Okay, better discussion. You've had a whole year during which you've had several events, and during which you spent about $350,000 on additional experts in-house to advise you to manage these processes. Our argument is that that is not the sign of vendor lockout. It may well be that if you want an upgrade, you can't go back to them. But if you want to go back to them, like we tried to explain, STL is just a contractor, it's an integrator sitting here. In fact, most of us don't have a problem with the analysis or by the EC that STL has not been totally candid and thoroughly cooperative. We've had issues with STL for years. The truth of the matter is that STL is an integrator. The real people we are dealing with is HSB and Genki. Genki with the ABs, HSB with the peripherals and infrastructure. Now, our argument is very simple. If you wanted to really do
a simple point of this thing, the middle bit that manages the middleware is actually an STL product.
But that glue.
Okay.
That glue is integration. That's exactly the point I was trying to make. So we go to the point where I wanted to point out very clearly that we've had a situation where over time we've done continuous upgrade and continuous improvement. What is now required critically is two things. One is that the EC want to go into a process of continuous registration. That means that they need to equip more of their officers with more devices so that over time they can do more continuous registration. What does that mean? It means that you don't wait, you are doing only mass registration.
All right.
Intermittently, people go and register. Now that process is more important to me. Getting that done and invested in and sorted out will help them also with the NI integration, because you have more resource to do co-location and the likes of it, than spending money on a new register, which to my mind is more risky. Why? Because we know that the initial implementations tend to have more failures. We saw that in 2012 with the initial implementation, 33% of polling stations had problems. There's nothing that tells us that if you do the new implementation today and we use it for the first time, we'll not have the repeat of what happened in 2012.
Okay.
In fact, the evidence will suggest probably the opposite.
All right. Let's go to Skype now and connect with Dr. Samuel Boateng. Dr. Samuel Boateng is the CEO of Slam Technologies of the USA and Ghana. He's an accomplished cybersecurity expert, has done upwards of 20 years of successful experience in technology-based positions of progressive responsibility and strong background in managing information assurance, among others. Doc, thank you very much for making time to join us and keeping faith with us from start up to this point, sir.
Thank you very much.
Great. So, having listened to the Electoral Commission, they have clearly outlined system challenges, and for them there doesn't appear to be an option of upgrade, and also they have outlined operational challenges. From where you sit, looking at all of that, doesn't it seem to you that the operational challenges or issues are exclusive and resolvable separately? Therefore, you could do an upgrade.
Thank you, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate the opportunity to be in here. This is all about election security, and I believe from the standpoint of Dr. Simmons and Dr. J and Dr. Clara, everything is laid correctly. One of the key areas that I deduced is the endpoint data. I have understood that our focus is to change the older system, which I believe is a legacy system. And changing the legacy system is not the case, but is the endpoint data. How are we maintaining the current system posture is what is very most important for us. Because if we have immutable systems, the systems are not taken care of. As Dr. J was saying that servers were crashed, that means we do not have redundancy in place. We need to put them in place. How do you do some trajectory based on the system that you are maintaining? The endpoint data, securing them is the most important aspect of this. Looking into the new systems may be good, but if we are not putting a lot in place, like creating some kind of connectivity, endpoint security, I believe if we do not do that, but we're focusing on system changes, and I think those probably wouldn't help a lot. One of the key areas that I was baffled is using same biometric authentication process. At least we should have factor two methods of authentication: something you know and something you are, something you have and something you are. Something you have is already what we're going through, Ghana card, other registrations that we are using. Now we can factor the biometrics as something you are. Your retina scan, I believe facial recognition is a weaker encryption, as Dr. Simon mentioned. And from the standpoint, I believe we are trying to get there, but the data collection is what we need to make sure is secured correctly. when we are amalgamating all the data from Dr. Atefa's and then Dr. Jay's, and we are not able to consolidate them correctly, we will tend to lose data. So we need to also focus on how we can integrate these two companies, making them work together so we can achieve the same purpose. And I believe that is what we want to achieve here.
All right. They talk about, you know, current challenges to the system. And in their conclusion, the current system is not able to support the current and future demands of the Commission. It is a closed proprietary system that does not allow itself for upgrades. The hardware equipment obsolete, had falling parts, and difficult to maintain with expensive and unsustainable maintenance cost. The Commission, vendor locked in, IT staff do not own the system as they were shut out. There is a potential risk of data loss if there were no backup of disaster recovery plan, and that's the system now. Don't you think that they have a case?
They do, especially when you know, we don't have any room for upgrades and updates. That means we are vulnerable. And as a cyber expert, I involve in doing a lot of hacking, and I'm always looking for weakness in order to break a system. And so if I pick a system like this, it's definitely going to be a very simple and easy way to break into that system. I mean, you know, disconnecting the system from working, like, you know, they said they believe in 2020 elections, the system definitely is going to have some hiccups.
Right.
It is one of the key areas that we need to focus. Create redundancy. Now, we don't have time, right, to run a new system and test them. That means the older systems that we have, we need to put some security measures. We need to take some of these systems out of line. I'm talking about taking them out of online so that they are not posing more threats to the, you know, to the country. And there are a lot that we can do afterwards. But for now, data collection, putting intrusion detection systems behind them, and then firewalls, eliminating all other third-party applications that we do not have control of. We need to kind of build this in such a way that we creating a security at the back end, and then the system also has redundancy, right? We need to plan in such a way that we don't only focus on the new modernization. Because when you are modernizing, since, you know, from your own statement, that the system is not capable of integration, right? We will suffer because if we need to integrate the system to a new platform, we will have to test the new platform to see that how can we migrate these systems into the new platform. So modernizing these is going to take time because we have to do the test case, and the test case takes time. And so I believe with the system that we currently have, we need to support it with a very strong back end and then start protecting these systems, especially with the backup. There are a lot of ways to creating different backups. We can never even say that because it's older systems, we can never do backup.
So your suggestion will be that they do these backups and also provide the securities that you suggest by way of an upgrade in the meantime, and then subsequently seek to tap into the NIA's data for, you know, the future. Is that what you suggest?
Absolutely. Because the reason is that if you want to modernize an older system, you need to give yourself a little time. You need to test the case and also use that test case to see if it is working. Now we are bringing you new systems for biometrics. We're doing fingerprints. We're doing the retina scan. We're doing the facial recognitions. These are modernized systems. And so if we are integrating to the older platform and it's not working, then of course we don't have a system because there's a broken system.
In 2012, we did it within the election year. We were able to test and proceed with it. What makes it different now that we can't seem to have the time to do it?
No, we started procurement in 2011.
One of the key is that you want to avoid loss of data, right? You want to avoid loss of data, and also you want to avoid the rush of time. Because with IT systems, designing and creating a very good architectural systems for migrating system, you will lose a lot of people. And if you are not careful, then you're going to be the punch bag for the for everybody to talk about.
That's rather a reason they gave for a new system instead of the backup. They say because you will lose data, you shouldn't be thinking of an upgrade and a backup like you think. You should rather do a new one.
Absolutely, because if upgrade should have been done, it should have been done a year way ahead of time before we get to the election year. And so when you are adding this, including registration, this is going to overwhelm the IT group. And so definitely you will tend to lose a lot of a lot of data. And so to my suggestion, I believe that we, there has to be a proper way to backing up the system and a proper way to, creating a back-end integration for the newer platforms that are coming in. It's a database, so there can be a very good manipulation where, this system can work. It's quite understandable that most of these systems are very immutable, right? So the immutable system shouldn't be online, but rather we have to create a very good, solid database so that we can collect the data at any time.
All right, Doc, we're very grateful for your time. Dr. Boateng joining us from the United States of America. And we go to the phone lines now. So you can call. The number to call is 0302 211 70124. 0302 211 701 or 702 703 704. Phone lines opened. Call and ask your questions. You have 30 seconds to do that and go straight to the point. Otherwise, you'll be cut off. You lose the opportunity to ask your question. So you can call right now and let's have your questions. Direct them specific to the EC, or it is Bryce Simmons you want to respond to you, that's fine. But the EC should be answering your questions this morning. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And Newsfile is paid for by MTN everywhere you go. Star Assurance, your solid partner. Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner. Istiqbal, quality beyond measure. Amen Scientific, God is the healer. GIA, always remember, insurance companies, claims, payments are business. Someone is calling from WA. Yes, go ahead. What's your question? What's your name?
My name is Idris Muslim.
Yes,
Good
Idris.
morning. My problem is the NIA and then the EC. To the best of my knowledge, they said the NIA age about 15 years can register. Mr. Atupu made mention of 7,000. Hello?
7 million.
Please go ahead. 7
Yeah,
million,
Mr. Atupu
7
made
million,
mention of
7.3 million. 7.3 million.
7.3 million, sorry. So those ages between the 15 to 17, can you give us a figure within that period so that the issue will know the number that they are able to get?
All right.
On the
So 95%.
registration point is 18 and above. So it is 18 and above.
93.
And the 18 downwards, how many percentage
Yeah.
is part of the 7.something
Okay.
million there?
All right.
So that if the certificate can come back and give us an answer there, so that the issue will not lie.
Thank
on
you
them.
very much. I think he answered that. He said about 93% of that is the aid that the EC has need for. Yes, who is next? Yes, Gilbert Ablempe, let's hear your question straight away.
Hello?
Gilbert, go ahead. What's your question? Gilbert, ask your question. Okay, I think we've lost Gilbert on the line. So who is next is 0302 211 701 or 702 703 704. In the meantime, as they are trying to sort out the system there, you wanted to talk about the continuous registration. I think some time limits that have to be applied. What exactly is that you want to talk about, and how does it factor into what we are talking about?
I just wanted to say that there's always a difference between theory and practicals.
Okay.
There are a lot of things that we can talk about, but when you go to the field, you cannot implement them.
Okay.
For example, in the CR that we are holding, it talks about Regulation 91. 1. So the Regulation 9.1 says that we should do continuous registration so that we have avoided the mass registration that we have been doing. The law goes further to say that we should meet the political parties to agree on the modalities. We met them, they said, no way. And the reason is that they need to be at the offices whenever registration is being done. And it will mean that you also have to have permanent agents at the centers. So there are a lot of things that we clearly, like this is the NIA issue that we are talking about. It's a good issue. But I believe that we need to do a lot of consultation because it will meet a serious resistance that I have no doubt. So we will get there. But for now, we think that we need to get our register, go ahead with the 2020 election. For us, we do the consultation. When everything is satisfied, we can now...
Do you seem to appreciate that there appears to be some groundswell of public opinion, civil society, 18 of them come together? You hardly see that happening. And we just listened to Dr. Boateng suggesting that your way forward is not to begin a new thing.
All these things, that's what I'm saying, there's a difference between theory and practice. When we go into the election with the current system that we are saying is faulty, and the challenges come, I believe nobody will be pointing fingers at the Electoral Commission.
Can I just add that Dr. Boateng didn't specifically say that creating a new solution wasn't the way forward.
I asked him specific, and he said, so let me pick John from Boku, and then I'll get back to you. Yes, John, what's your question? All right, that's unfortunate.
Yes,
Go ahead.
So what Dr. Boateng what he actually said was that he highlighted the risks of upgrading systems. And those are some of the things that we considered.
Okay.
He said a lot more than that.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. He said a lot more than that, but he did highlight the risks of upgrades and the fact that there was a potential loss for information and that you even had to go back and check and be sure that you sanitize your data. All that is time consuming. And all that was considered in the decision to just do a new one. The truth of the matter is that, and once again, if you look at the tender document that was given out, and I know Bright says that he hasn't seen it, but it's available, they can look at it. The specifications that were put out for the requirements, the software requirements, were clear. And we're looking at something that had been used before. So you needed, for instance, you needed to have used the system in 3 jurisdictions in a setting that is similar to Ghana. Social setting, economic setting, technology settings.
Your choice is PESOL's data center, right?
No.
It's not?
For the disaster recovery.
No. The data center.
Because the question that's being asked is why, and you should show us good reason why you would prefer PESOL's data center when government has a data center which can provide exclusive services to the EC with conditional access.
Okay. I have given you a reason why hosting the service in a government-controlled data center wasn't tenable to the EC. Let me make a clarification. We are not putting our systems in a PESOL data center. PESOL and its consortium of companies have been given a contract to construct a new data center for the EC. And once again, if you go back and look at the tender documents as it was for them to build and transfer ownership and management to the EC's own staff. So knowledge transfer and further maintenance will be taken over by the EC.
Are they the same people to provide the BVMS?
No.
Good.
Okay. So once again, let me explain that.
There's a question. I don't know if Dr. Shriver will take this. Michael is asking that the Taxpayers Union have written to the Electoral Commission to provide some information to them relevant to the discussion. It has duly received, you have received their letter, but you have not responded to them. Why is that so? And they have given me a copy of the letter, which is dated Wednesday.
Taxpayers Union.
Yes, Taxpayers Union. Wednesday, 15th January 2020. Okay, you're not aware?
I'm not aware of the letter.
Okay, you may want to find out. And then someone is on the line. Gamel? Okay, yes, what's your question, please?
Good morning.
What's your question?
My question is that I think we need a new register because looking at the presentation of the NIA, a lot of people are not willing to go and do and the tedious nature. But when it comes to election, people do go to do because of the interest they have in the election. So when we are going to use the NIA card, I think we'll have less people and then it will be chaotic when it comes to the election.
Okay, thank you. So that's a contribution rather than a question. Stanley, calling from Ho. Stanley, what's your question?
Yeah, my question is, I'm unclear what Dr. Boati from US was saying, whether he was saying that we should go on with the upgrade or we should kind of introduce a new system altogether. And then secondly, to the IT consultant from Electoral Commission, I think that building a new center now is neither here nor there because it is an obsolete system which we shouldn't introduce in Ghana. You can have other, OS.
Thank you, Fuseni. Fuseni, yes. What's your question?
Thank you very much. My question goes to the electoral commissioners. We were being told that we were going to engage in a referendum, and then we are also done with the district assembly elections. Now the EC was poised. They thought their systems were poised to carry out both exercises successfully. I want to find out whether they were relying on the new register they are talking about or the existing one. And if it is the existing one, what challenges did they face during the elections of local assemblies that they think that if we bring the new system, those challenges will not be faced? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll take my very last call from Joe. Joe, you're calling from Broga. Yes, what's your question?
Yes, please. Good morning to your panelists.
Joe,
good morning.
Go ahead with your question. Good morning. Go ahead.
Please, I want to ask the HT officials there. When did they conceive the idea of, compiling a new voters register? Because if they had thought of it earlier on, they would have, created the voters register such that they could have used it for the district assembly election and the referendum that they were going to conduct. So that it would be a test case. So that we'll now push it towards the main election, as they themselves are saying that district level elections and the referendum is not us.
All right.
It's hosted picture as compared to the main.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So question understood. Yes. So if we can start with Joe from Boga, there's no opportunity for test. He's worried about that. Fuseni is asking, you relying on the old register or what for the process that you are going through? And Stanley is simply saying that you don't need a new system.
Well, I think that the point has been made that the decision to look into the possible acquisition of a new system had been long been discussed, which had culminated in the release of the tender documents to do that. But you understand that there are processes to be followed. And even if these processes had ended, would there have been significant time enough for us to have had a system in place that we could have used for the referendum and the district level elections? We didn't think so. So basically what we did was we said the equipment that we have now, we were going to try our utmost best to ensure that they were fit enough to be used for that election. Even at that period, and I'm sure you heard the chairperson say, it took about 6 months and 2 million Ghana cedis just to get those equipments up and ready for these exercises. And even then, trust me, for all of us who were in the process, we were on tenterhooks. We had sleepless nights because we weren't sure when the equipment would fail.
All right.
The other point that needs to be made was that the 0.6% failure rate that you are reporting, it's just figures that are coming from the DLE.
All right. District assembly.
District level elections.
Okay.
So
Thank
needs,
you.
that needs to be made.
So, can we be clear about this? Is a done deal? You are going ahead to give a new system, or what?
For now, that is our stand.
Okay. So it's a decision. It's concluded.
That was in there.
Okay.
We are doing
I thought the eminent advisory panel that you set up
to engage them,
ask you to consult
to make our points clear.
Okay. Okay. So you're just seeking to inform.
Exactly.
That is a done deal. Okay. Yes, Clara. What do you say?
Well, it's unfortunate, like I said, for the EC. I think we have to stop. I mean, starting everything over again. The continuous registration process that he talked about, I understand the questions that he says the political parties are raising, but I don't think these are questions that they cannot find a way out, they cannot solve, particularly that we are in a technological age.
Right.
So the citizen has a right to continuous registration, also because it reduces the time and the cost on taxpayers. We have to respect citizens. It is not quite the best to ask citizens all the time to go and just join long queues. That is actually disenfranchising citizens at some point, because if you can't afford the time, what are you going to do? You are not going to register. Right. And that means that you are being disenfranchised. So these are issues that we can resolve, but we must move away from this procurement, because it's becoming more like procurement. We just want to procure.
Right, what do you say finally?
So
like he just said, they are done. Four quick points in 1 minute?
2 minutes, because they took all the time. First is maturity versus performance. Buying a new system, they claim will increase performance, but it's also risky because it will be a greenfield system. They have to learn about it. And therefore, the risk that we have problems is higher. Just in 2012, we had more problems than we had in 2016 because the system was new. Number two,
in 2012, we procured in 2011.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. We had more problems when we were starting than the continuous, the subsequent ones that we had.
Okay.
Number two, the format of the biometric templates that are being used, the one that the NIA is proposing to transfer, and the one that Genki is already has and has collected and is being used, can be safely transported even if we decide to change the hardware. Right. And the reason is that they are all CBEFF compliant, all ISO 9785 compliant, and there is WSQ that enables you to go back to the image archive and regenerate the biometric templates even if you have a problem. And all of these are integrated.
Thank you.
And then the last point I have to make is that the cost of the EC system that they are proposed is 3 times what our benchmarking studies suggest. So even that system is not cheap.
Interesting. This has been Newsfile. This has been Newsfile. This has been Newsfile, and my outfit, as always, is by Latida. Be in Vogue. My guests have been Bright Simmons, Honorary Vice President, Imani Africa, also representing the 18 CSOs who are against this. Dr. Srebwo Kweku is Director of Electoral Services, Electoral Commission, Ghana. Clara Berry Kaseti is Legal Consultant and Law Lecturer. Yao Ejay Oforie J, Dr. Yao Ejay Oforie J is IT Consultant to the Electoral Commission of Ghana. We spoke to Professor Kenneth Ajiman Atefra, who's Executive Secretary, National Identification Authority, and Dr. Samuel Boateng, Cybersecurity Expert and CEO Slam Technologies in the US and here in Ghana. Randy Abe is your guest on Sports Link. Don't go anywhere. Have a good afternoon.